I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 6th regular meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is now in session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For a roll call, all board members are present except for Director Burnick. Before we get started in the first item on the agenda, which is the open forum, I'm going to ask everyone in the room, including board members, for a moment of silence. I would like to honor the memory of Director of Operational Services Jim Delwu, who passed away on April 11th while in his 15th year of serving our district, and longtime coach and former staff member Brad Bulver, who passed away on March 22nd. Thank you. Now we're going to proceed to open forum. And where are the rules? Because we have so many speakers tonight and plenty of new speakers, I'm going to read the rules in full before we get started. The rules are, in accordance with Policy 203, the board sets aside 15 minutes to receive citizen input through an open forum. Input from students, staff, parents, and community members in major decisions can be a valuable form of assistance to the board. Open forum is an opportunity to address the board. The open forum is a safe space for PLSAS community members to share experiences, concerns, and feedback in accordance with their First Amendment rights. The forum is an opportunity for our community to elevate the conversation, create healthy spaces for dialogue, and demonstrate respect for opposing views so that we can all collectively do better. At least 10 minutes prior to each meeting, a sign-up sheet was available at the meeting site for individuals to sign up to address the board. Up to 5 speakers are normally provided, a maximum of 3 minutes each to address the board unless an exception is granted by the board chair. Speakers will not be allowed to verbally attack, disparage, or potentially defame individual board members, employees, or students, nor may speakers use vulgar or profane language. Also, speakers may be precluded from disclosing personally identifiable private data regarding employees or students. Speakers unwilling to conform to the rules or time constraints may be told his or her privilege of speaking has ended. If you have any handouts or materials for the board, please submit those items in advance to Martha Walsh. Members of the public should not approach the dais. The board will not review handouts during public comment period. Board members will listen respectfully to issues brought to them by the community, but will not engage individuals during their time. The board shall not deliberate or take action during the open forum regarding an issue presented. Each forum speaker should indicate whether they would like a follow-up by administration on the speaker or mention them in their speech. The chair will request the superintendent to follow up on the matter as appropriate. After open forum and when the board chair proceeds with the meeting, the audience comments are no longer in order. However, board members retain the right to call on district administrators for information to assist the board in its deliberations. Thank you in advance to the speakers and the audience for respectfully sharing, listening, and being engaged in the Prior Lake Savage Area Schools community. Because we have a large number of speakers tonight, as chair, I am going to waive the maximum number of speakers. I will ask that you try to keep it shorter, if you can, than the 3 minutes. And I really want everyone to have the chance to be heard and also to express the board's appreciation for community involvement in the district. So the first speaker we have is Owen Bryntesen. Thank you. And you will be speaking on the CPM math.
Okay. First, I want to start with saying thank you for listening. I've been to some teaching and learning surveys my friends and I were given. I want to come tonight and speak for myself. lots of reasons students have said that not correcting homework, so we don't know what have a hard time concentrating in group sense or have anything to do with math. We just need you to stop dismissing us and listen to what we are telling you and why. Have any of you who don't have kids in this pilot even taken the time to read thoroughly through our workbooks or any of the lessons yourself? Here's some example questions. What are 3 songs you currently enjoy listening to? What is something you enjoy doing with your family, neighbors, or community members? And admission to the festival is free and includes live music and some activities. Participants pay for snacks and some other activities. Sam only participated in the free events and spent $0 all day, saving $118.92. How can Sam use the money they saved? How does having questions like these every day on homework and tests give us a strong understanding of numbers or a foundational understanding of algebra? We are begging you to not continue making us guinea pigs. My mom told me that Dr. Edwards said that it takes 3 years to see positive or negative results of a new curriculum. Don't you think our learning has been interrupted enough? Most of us middle schoolers and kids younger than us just started getting caught back up from all the learning disruptions of COVID. 3 years may be no time for you guys, but it's the core of our learning years here. When you vote on this next week, we are pleading with you to stop and actually think of me and all the other students who have been telling the adults how this math is not working and how we want to stick with the math we already have. Thank you for your time.
Next on the agenda on CPM Math, we have Sarah Anderson.
I just watched a Prior Lake School Board meeting from April 2023 with some concern. As a member of the Teaching and Learning Committee, I looked up specifics in Minnesota statutes, and it appears that our committee is not meeting some state statutes. In this Bridges approval meeting that I watched, it was stated that, quote, any curriculum should be increasing measurable student learning and achievement in math, and, quote, we spent a lot of time looking at the most recent research. These things cannot be said of CPM. It was also stated that there was a presentation of Bridges to the Learning Committee for approval. Why was this discarded for CPM Math? We were never asked for approval or recommendation in any way. At committee meetings, it felt like there was a lack of transparency. We were shown slides with survey results that weren't accurate and graphs of achievement that don't even apply to the math pilot. I have heard lately of even more parents who did not receive the survey that we were told was sent to everyone. A lack of continuity in conducting surveys will not give you accurate data. I have spoken to parents who actually received a different survey in a different month with completely different questions, yet we were not shown that data. It should be disclosed. I have learned of multiple students who were not interviewed personally, as was told to us. Surveying the parents and students matters because I have spoken to parents with children ranging from being on the autism spectrum to being high achievers, and there doesn't seem to be representation for them in math. So I feel that if we're discarding them, that maybe doesn't meet our diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. Our district test scores and various rankings continue to fall. Our high school is now ranked far lower than any neighboring high school on School Digger. We have dropped almost 100 spots in just over a decade. Why the rush to approve this? Why not wait until our new strategic plan is out? Why not reach out to get accurate survey results? This is about our students' learning and futures. Thank you.
Next, we have Shanna Bates on class size.
Take a breath. Good evening, school board directors and Dr. Thomas. My name is Shayna Bates, and I teach first grade at Hamilton Ridge. And I'm here today to thank you for being responsive to class size numbers last summer in the primary grades. My class size was 20 first graders this year, down from 26 first graders the year before. This has had a tremendously positive impact on my students. As a grade level, the first grade teachers at Hamilton Ridge have noticed incredible growth in reading and phonics specifically. After every phonics unit test, we marvel at how much our students are growing. We know that the smaller class size has allowed us to work with students more frequently and have more active engagement and participation during whole group instruction. Having smaller class sizes has also made for a calmer and quieter environment for the first graders. We find ourselves as teachers being able to quickly intervene during conflicts and can teach problem-solving skills on the spot. Being able to learn these skills at an early age will benefit our kids for years to come. Having smaller class sizes allows us to give extra attention to each and every student. Once again, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for giving this group of kids and teachers this incredible experience. Smaller class sizes really do make a difference.
Next, we have Amber Corcoran on the CPM math curriculum.
Good evening, School Board and Dr. Thomas. My name is Amber Corcoran, and I am a 7th grade math teacher at Twin Oaks Middle School. This is my 13th year teaching in the district, and I've loved every minute of being a teacher. Throughout my teaching career at Twin Oaks, I have taught a variety of math levels, including 6th, 7th, 8th grade extensions and advanced courses. One thing that has always concerned me is that students weren't retaining mathematical concepts from year to year. When it was math's turn for curriculum review, coupled with our new math standards, I was eager to start diving in. One thing my colleagues know about me is I research everything and will spend hours of my own time digging into something. I read books on effectively teaching mathematics, I listened to several podcasts from the Minnesota Department of Education, talked to peers in other districts, and I also joined online groups with teachers from around the country. On top of that, I personally requested versions of 3 of the 5 curricula that we were researching and spent a lot of my free time in the spring of 2023 diving into those online platforms and workbooks. After all that, we were all given some time to research curriculum on our own. The middle school math department decided to pilot CPM because it was the only one we felt matched our Prior Lake math vision and truly fit the needs of all of our students. My eyes have truly been opened since teaching with CPM. The depth of knowledge I thought students once had has been blown away by my students this year. Students are thinking for themselves. They're understanding the why behind mathematical concepts, and they are owning their own learning experience. Students are engaging with their peers in math talk and having debates over math problems. This is what every teacher strives for, and it's happening in my classroom. Our Prior Lake mission is to educate all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing global community. CPM emphasizes real-world applications, collaborative learning, and hands-on activities to help students see the relevance of math in their daily lives. It also provides support for struggling students while challenging those who excel, ensuring that every child has the opportunity to reach their full potential. The rigor of this curriculum is greater than lecture-based, sit-and-get, and skill-and-drill curriculums we've had in the past. CPM has over 35 years of evidence-based data to support it. So I ask the board tonight to please trust us as teachers, the professionals, that CPM is what best for all students here in Prior Lake. It is time for us to embrace an approach that not only teaches the content, but also fosters critical thinking, problem solving, and a deeper understanding of mathematical concepts, which again matches our district's mission statement. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Next, we have Rachel Carlson on Board Chair Communication.
Tonight, I would like to address board communication. The futures of our children are riding on the decisions made by this board elected to represent us. I emailed the school board Friday with a simple question. Why was the board approval request for middle school math curriculum moved from May 6th to May 13th? I was met with multiple responses from the board chair on behalf of the board that never actually answered my question. The agenda has not been released to the public. It is released on Monday per policy, Best Mary Franz. I responded that I had pulled both agendas from the district website. I shared screenshots and the link where I accessed them. Her response, Ms. Carlson, the only board packet and agenda that is currently available on the website is the April 22nd study session. The version you pictured was never posted on the website. Per policy, the board agenda and packet is not released to the public until Monday. I responded confused since I had accessed both on the district website and even shared the link on a local Facebook page, and again added screenshots and links showing where I've routinely accessed this agenda. No response. So I sent a new email asking the original question again, since I hadn't gotten an answer. The response, the agenda and packet are not officially released to the public until Monday of the board meeting per policy. Any agenda you may see prior to the meeting is subject to change and often changes as board agenda is dependent upon multiple factors. I responded that this again is not the answer that I was looking for and proceeded to reach out to Director Bullion, who also responded with a non-answer. I don't know the exact reason for the vote to be postponed. I'm sure there are many factors. Then I reached out to Dr. Thomas. He stated the plan had already been adjusted from the original April vote and that they wanted to give board another week to process all the information. Since the agenda is created by both the board chair and superintendent, why didn't the board chair just answer my question? It is board's responsibility per policy 203 to exercise honesty in all written communications and follow up with community members to ensure the answer was addressed. The last response I received suggests that the board chair is now aware that I had reached out to another board director and Dr. Thomas, and therefore no further communication with me is necessary. When asked if she was suggesting that I access the agenda without authorization, she wrote, "I'm sorry that you believe that anyone is accusing you of anything. Even elementary students know this is not an apology." I'm grateful that the board is discussing board chair communication in an upcoming study session. No board chair that I have ever communicated with prior to this has responded in such a disrespectful manner. I would encourage the board to consider whether Director France is fulfilling her role with integrity when communicating on behalf of the board and how many other stakeholders are treated the same. I would like to thank Dr. Thomas for his quick response and transparency. And I'd also like to share a note that from a local private school that piloted Inspiring Connections, they have indeed decided against adoption due to the student and parent feedback. Thank you.
Next, we have Nikki Drain on the CPM math teacher perspective.
Good evening. My name is Nikki Drain, and I'm a longtime resident of Prior Lake. I've also taught at several of our elementary schools, including Westwood Elementary, Hamilton Ridge, and Sage Academy. For the past 2 years, I've been on assignment as a peer coach in the district, serving at Five Hawks Elementary, Twin Oaks, and Hidden Oaks, and supporting our middle school math educators as part of that assignment. As a teacher, I hold a high standard for our students, and I'm deeply enthusiastic about the process of learning itself. I guess you could say I love learning about learning. This passion has driven me to pursue additional licensures in both middle school math and middle school science, a master's degree in teaching and learning, and countless hours of graduate level coursework beyond that. Because of my current role, I have a unique perspective I want to share with you tonight. I have observed math instruction at both elementary and middle school, witnessing firsthand the implementation of Bridges and CPM math. I have sat alongside my peers working through professional processes of learning, reflecting, scrutinizing, and eventually seeing my middle school math colleagues come to a departmental consensus. Given the limited time, I can only skim the surface of my observations and insights, so here are just 3 beginning thoughts for you this evening. To begin, our pilot teachers in both elementary and middle school have expressed the desire to bring our Prior Lake math vision into a reality. Professional organizations such as NCTM have laid forth standards for effective teaching and student learning practices. These practices are integrated into our new Minnesota State math standards that are coming into effect, and they're foundational for the CPM math curriculum. Second, the desire and intent of our teachers has come from wanting to facilitate a more rigorous and robust math experience for our students. We are responding to our board and community's call to take action when outcomes aren't where we want them to be. The tools, spiral design, and rich problem sets of CPM supports our teachers' work of increasing students' depth of understanding, long-term retention of concepts, and conducting an active rather than passive math learning experience for our students. One simple example of this is the use of mathematical modeling and manipulatives. So at elementary, I see our students learning with tools such as number racks, 10 frames, number lines to consolidate their understanding. Then at middle school, in the CPM classrooms, I see hands-on manipulatives such as algebra tiles, Anglegs, and Desmos math. Finally, I'd like to highlight the shift among our educators from an initial professional skepticism to enthusiasm from our pilot teachers, and then a unified commitment from our middle school math department. In fact, a most excellent educator recently told me, "Nikki, one of the most difficult and yet rewarding and beneficial things I have ever done for my students was to be open to teaching in a way that I had never been taught." Thank you for your continued support in this work so we can move together toward the standard of excellence that we all so deeply desire for our students in Prior Lake. Thank you.
The next speaker is Stacy Buckingham on the CPM curriculum adoption.
Hello, thank you for your time tonight. My name is Stacy Buckingham. I am a member of the Teaching and Learning Committee. I hold my master's degree in curriculum and instruction, and I was a classroom teacher before I was a parent. This school board, I think, will be making an expensive mistake if it votes to implement the CPM as its middle school curriculum. I have spoken to a middle school math teacher who is piloting CPM this year and would like to share the feedback I received from that teacher. From that teacher's perspective, CPM is inefficient. Kids are placed in groups of 3 or 4 and required to learn the lesson together. 5 minutes of class time is wasted just getting people seated in the right teams. A teacher may have to explain the same thing 5 or 6 times since students are split into groups, while many being idle from doing their work until a teacher arrives to answer their questions. Not one student that I have encountered had said that they prefer this CPM style than the traditional math methods. Students who are actually interested in learning math are frustrated because students who aren't interested are disruptive in the teams they're placed in each day. Students have said the math homework is incredibly difficult since the problems have little bearing on the lessons they worked on that particular day, and there are a few examples to reference back to. Lastly, the students say that the tests seem very unfair because if you spent weeks working on a certain topic, that is very likely only 1 or 2 questions on the test, and mostly it spirals back, which is an intention of a spiral curriculum to circle back and touch back on things, but tests typically cover what you've most recently learned versus end of the year test. Another aspect of CPM that this teacher disliked is because the homework has booklets and careful correction takes time, that they were delayed in giving more homework because of the whole process of collecting and giving back notebooks. Because this is a spiral curriculum, mastery is not necessarily the goal, and I can't disagree with the teachers who spoke that a solid, concrete math understanding is important and necessary. I was teaching with hands-on things in my classroom 25 years ago, so it's not a new concept. It might be new to middle schoolers to do it that way, but I don't think it needs to be this or that. On the committee, we continually asked for data. Can you please show us data that this works, that this helps students? And we have still not received any data. I would love to see that if there is some, because maybe it is awesome and maybe kids flourish and maybe kids do wonderfully. But we are working with a deficit right now. We have no proof from the committee standpoint that this is a successful curriculum. And that is where our frustration comes in on my point. I understand that there's a new curriculum for elementary school and that this seems to flow right into it. But I have to question, why can't teachers, because our teachers are our strength, and we were told this on the committee, that the teachers do need to fix the new CPM curriculum already because it's lacking direct instruction. So maybe they could take what they liked, the small group and problem solving, and put it with what we already have. Thank you.
Last, I believe, is support of CPM by Tanya Shopper.
All right, members of the board, Dr. Thomas, I'm Tanya Shopper. I'm a mom of 3 Lakers, 3 teens, bless me, and a 19-year resident of Credit River. I've been teaching mathematics to 8th graders for 26 years, and over that time, I've taught over 4,000 students. I've been in 2 districts, 3 different schools. I've attended both state and national conferences that have centered around mathematics education, and I've been a teacher leader in both Anoka Hennepin and the Prior Lake Savage area schools. I maintain professional connections with educators around the state. I'm an expert in my field, and I'm here to tell you that I'm ecstatic for the CPM curriculum. Mathematics is coming alive to students, and they're seeing how they can apply it outside of the classroom. 2 summers ago, I had lunch with a former coworker, and we reflected on our school years. I had been coming off of one of the hardest years I've ever had, and she was like ecstatic. It was filled with joy and excitement when she told me about her year. And what was different was they had just implemented CPM. Core Connections, and she was amazed by the engagement and the level that the students were understanding, much like Ms. Corcoran talked about tonight. Students were exploring, learning, and connecting mathematics. I was intrigued, I started researching, and I learned. Mid-22-23 school year, our middle school department decided, as Ms. Corcoran said, to pilot CPM. The teachers, and we really are the experts in our field, who were using the curriculum previously in other districts, were very excited about the spiraling, the engagement, the critical thinking. Teachers who were originally skeptical of it after trying it said they would never go back to a traditional classroom. They believed the growth that the students were making and appreciated the challenges. Students were asked to think. They were becoming problem solvers, much like one of the board members saw in my classroom last week when she came to observe some of the strategies I'm trying to implement. The comments were that the engagement was spot on and they were very well behaved. We know that some people in our community are not satisfied with CPM. We know that some students aren't, and we're trying to do our best to approach those concerns and try to let people know what we're thinking about. We see the messages on social media. We hear the comments at the curriculum committee meetings, and we're doing our best to tell our story. This is what we're seeing in the classroom. It's not hearsay. We're the primary source. Our 6 teachers piloting see the value that the students are doing. CPM is a new style of learning math. It's a shift in how we do things. It's allowing us to change and prepare our students for an ever-changing global community. It's pushing them and it's testing different skills. This doesn't make it awful. This makes it what we need. I'm sure you remember hearing in high school that you need to do the algorithms. You're never going to have a calculator with you all the time. We have a calculator with us all the time. And we have apps like Photomath that do all the thinking for us, right? It is time for us to let our students do the thinking. We want to provide an experience where students are doing the work. We have 14 math teachers at the middle school. We have a combined 250 years of teaching experience for middle school kids. We have 26 of our own children, almost a full first grade classroom, right? We are members of this community. We need to stand behind the curriculum that we recommend.
Thank you,
We
Tanya.
wouldn't be supporting this if we didn't feel like we could tell our neighbors, our friends, and our community members, this is what our kids need. CPM is what our middle schools need.
Thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So I need a motion and a second to approve the agenda for tonight. Oh, sorry. Oh, a treasurer pro tem. Director Olsted, will you please be the treasurer pro tem in absence of Director Burnick? Sure. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move on with the approval of the agenda. I need a motion and a second.
So made.
By Director Crosby,
Second.
by Director Velasquez. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 6 out of 6. Okay, first item on our agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are considered to be routine in nature and enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed as a consent agenda item and addressed in the unfinished business. In new business, I'm sorry. So the consent agenda contains the financials, which includes purchase orders, a monthly financial report, and the purchase orders, monthly financial report, enrollment report, approval of school board minutes, personnel items, which also includes resignations and terminations and leaves of absences, among other things. And that's it. So can I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So made.
Okay, by Director Crosby, and a second? By
second.
Director Olsted? Anything taken off? No? Okay. All in favor? Aye. That passes 6 out of 6. Okay, next on our agenda is the resolution for acceptance of gifts. First, I'm going to take a motion in a second.
So made.
By Director Atkinson,
Second.
and second by Director Velasquez. Okay. On our resolution acceptance of gifts, we have the Prior Lake Lions Club for $1,500 for graduation honor courts. We have the Lions Club again for $2,500 for youth scholarships. We have the Prior Lake Savage Optimist Club, $4,000 for the Five Hawks Gym Projector Project, and the SMSC for the construction of the shed on our PLSA SAS property, which I believe was at Five Hawks? No?
I think it's at
Okay,
the
yeah.
high school.
This is a roll call vote. Director Atkinson?
Yeah, I just had a question actually about the sheds. So thank you for the generous donation. I know we have some members of the community here this evening. I was just wondering if I could learn a little bit more about it, where it's located and what it will be used for.
Sure. I will have Director Oak come forward and talk a little bit about the partnership and the donation that they would like to make to the district.
Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, the shed will be located at Prior Lake High School. This is a request for a donation, and the SMSC needs a letter for the approval that we will move forward with doing the shed, and then the donation will be requested.
And what is it used
The
for?
shed is for our native programming.
Regalia.
Regalia, TP, poles, and everything like that that needs to be stored there. Things that are related to the internet programming. Right now, there is a lack of storage space. We find some places to put certain things, at the high school or other schools where Freddie and Mercedes are working at, but there's no standard place to store all the materials there.
Thank you. And thank you for the generous donation.
Okay, any other questions? This is a roll call vote, starting with Director Atkinson.
Aye.
Director
Aye.
Atkinson.
Aye.
And aye, that passes 6 out of 6. Okay, next we have Laker Pride, and I'm going to pass this over to Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair France, Board of Directors. Tonight, we have our Laker Educational Foundation President, Richie Kucinski, and our LEF Executive Director, Jamie Anderson. They are both here to present the school district with $10,568.45 to fund our spring grant requests. And we also have a few of our 2023 grant recipients in the audience tonight, and they will demonstrate how the funds were used for the project. So with that, I will turn it over to Principal Kucinski.
Excellent, thank you. Could some help? Hover.
Oh, you know.
Trying to find the presentation.
Is it still rebooting?
No, it's not. Did you press snooze?
Christy's coming.
In the meantime, my name is Richie Kucinski. I am, in my free time, I have the privilege of serving as the president of the Laker Education Foundation. Hold on.
Oh, it is rebooting.
Thank you, Christy. In about the 5 years that I've served on the board, when I first began, we had a board of, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 people, and we were still struggling with our purpose and what our mission was. Over the past few years, we've got a lot more engagement and a lot more visibility. We rebranded our website as well as kind of our public image, and we're so excited to be with you tonight to share some of the recipients of some of the grants that we've received. Here's a little bit about our background. The Laker Education Foundation has been around for several years, supporting students, supporting teachers, and supporting scholarships. And one of the big things that we implemented, and I'll let our executive director, Jamie Anderson, speak to this, a few years ago was the Laker Impact Grant, and what that has done to help bring funds and materials and resources directly to students.
Good evening, all. So the Laker Impact Grant, we had a presentation, I believe, earlier this year. The recipient of last year's Laker Impact Grant was the Prior Lake High School's Industrial Technology Department. We raised funds for them to buy some different equipment for their metals lab. So that was very exciting. And then LEF also has the Kalima scholarships that we offer every year. The scholarship is awarded to the top graduating math and science students at the high school. So it's in honor of the late Carrie Kalima, who was very instrumental in starting the Laker Educational Foundation and bringing it to where it is today. So another thing one of our main objectives at LEF is to raise funds that we can then administer to different projects throughout the district. So we have staff and teachers are eligible to submit a grant request, and we review the requests and then award funding every spring. So last year's grant recipients, one of our winners was the Spintronics Award, and they are here tonight to do a little demonstration. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori Bowie and her team.
Yes,
I think that's acceptable.
Why don't you guys get in order right here, and I'll just talk in here. My name is Lori Bowie. I teach 4th grade at Sage Academy at Westwood. And last spring, I was awarded a grant to purchase Spintronics. Spintronics is a mechanical representation of electrical current. In 4th grade, we do the typical battery, wire, light bulb, but kids can't really see what the energy is doing as it flows through those. This gives us the opportunity to understand what a circuit is, but enough from me. We're going to hear from some of my students. I have Lexi and Ria and Kevin and Avi. Do you usually face this way or that way? Does it matter? All right. Okay.
Electronic circuits are powered by a battery. The battery pulls chains through circuits pull electrons through wires. Science that short circuits are circuits without to avoid shorts, we need to add some resistance. The value of a resistor. We built a simple circuit using a switch and a 1,000 ohm resistor. Massive resistor that you can toggle on and off. Because of the grant from the Laker Educational Foundation, we also got the opportunity to add things to our circuit, like the Spintronics. The animator indicates the amount of current running through it by the volume and pitch of the sound it makes.
So we'd like to thank the foundation for this grant and for the learning that it's brought to our classroom and hopefully to other 4th grade classrooms in the district in the future.
Thank you very much, Spintronics team. I think that you want them to hang just for a moment, Christy, or? Yes, for
And I
a
have
picture?
a
Oh, and a certificate, yes. So we have one little award more to give you. Just wrapping it up really quickly from LEF. So we just finished our last 2024 spring grant cycle. And so on the screen and in your board packet, you have a list of the different awardees for this current grant cycle. So we designated over $10,000 this year. I'm just really, really excited about the applications that we received and the really amazing things that our teachers and staff are doing for our students. And then, of course, I have to plug our big event coming up. We are having a food truck fest downtown Prior Lake. So we're closing off Main Street on Saturday, May 18th from 3 to 7. So come on down. There's going to be a bunch of food trucks. We have some live music. It's just going to be a really great family-friendly, fun event. So we're really hoping that you'll be able to attend. And that is all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For the foundation. why don't you come and line up right in front of here and then look that way.
Good job, guys. Congratulations, good job.
Thank you.
So Chair France and Board Directors, seeing that our student board rep is not here this evening, I'm going to hold on our other Laker Pride, so when he's present, we can honor and recognize him as well. So pass on that. Turn it back to you, Chair France.
All right, so next order on the agenda is the personnel items. And I'm going to eventually hand this over to Executive Director of Administrative Services to talk about the Interim Director of Operational Services. However, I need a motion and a second.
So made.
By Director Bullion,
Second.
by Director Velazquez. Okay. Director Herman?
Thank you, Chair France, members of the board. We are bringing forward the recommendation for the interim position for the Director of Operational Services to be appointed to Maureen Mullen for the remainder of the school year to cover for the passing of Director Delwo.
Any questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 6-6. Or 6-0, sorry. And then also to Director Herman for additional staffing, and I need a motion and a second for this one also.
So made.
By Director Bullion,
Second.
by Director Olsted. Okay.
Thank you, Chair France, members of the board. We're bringing forward the request for the next year's school, the budget to add a .2 FTE for Dakota language and cultures teacher to meet the Indian education requirements. The funding will either come from a potential native language grant, or it will be increased in the general fund.
Okay, any questions?
Only question would be, can you, if it says funding for this will come from a grant or general fund, when will we know for sure? Is that something, like, is there a time when the grant? Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Vice Chair Bullion. I don't have the dates of the grant for me, but I can get that information to the board.
Thank you, sorry.
I actually had one question too, sort of related. If we do not receive the grant, could it come out of achievement integration funds versus general fund?
Director Atkinson, the plan is that we have dollars in the American Indian Education Assistant dollars. It'll come out of that, which is part of the general fund.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And just to clarify, Director Frederickson, that is a restricted fund for that purpose, right? Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 6-0. All right. We don't have any unfinished business, and then we're going to move on to new business. Do we have Casey ready?
I believe so. Just wanted to see if she's queued up. As we get prepared for this evening, our partnership with Studer Education has been to do our annual survey. And we are going to be presenting with you the results of the annual survey. Like we did last year for the board and the public, we'll have a redacted version of that in our offices. I don't know, it may be complete, or it's being completed right now still, so that will be available to view as well. But tonight we'll give you the overview of everything. And again, the purpose for this allows us to understand on key areas and metrics, where our stakeholders are sharing, where we have opportunities to improve and where we can celebrate. And this has been a real heavy, challenging year. And I will tell you in full disclosure that this survey picked up that challenge. I think many of our stakeholders felt that as well. And so these are some of the conversations that we are having as a leadership team. And then subsequently, this information will be disaggregated by schools for our school leader teams to have conversations with their building instructional leadership teams and in PACs, et cetera. So very useful information that really informs our day-to-day practice, and really excited for the partnership that we have, with Studer Education. So with that, I will turn it to Dr. Casey, and I believe Dr. Zumbush may be part of this conversation as well at some point. Hello, Dr. Casey, can you hear us?
I sure can, Dr. Thomas. Good evening.
Good evening.
Great. Good evening. I just set the stage for the conversation and the presentation. So I wasn't too sure if you were dialed into that, but I'll turn the floor over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Prior Lake Savage Area School Board of Directors, for the opportunity this evening to share your second year of experience results with us at Huron-Studer Education. I believe, as I heard Dr. Thomas say, I'm going to provide the high-level updates, and then I'll be turning it over to Dr. Zumbush to go through the district portion of the presentation tonight and share some of the work that the district leaders have been doing to advance the experience results of your surveys from 2024. So tonight, what you're going to see is a review of the student, parent, caregiver, and employee experience survey results. I'll go a little slower through the student results so that I can explain some of the survey metrics. And then tonight, you have the great advantage of seeing the differences between the 2023 and the 2024 scores. And we'll highlight some takeaways for you in that as we go through the slides this evening. So what you will see on the slide in front of you tonight, we'll start with the students, and you can see the spring 23 and 24 participation rates, the overall mean, and the top box percentage. And so I think participation rate is pretty straightforward, as is overall mean. You'll notice in green the positive changes in each of those between the 2 years of survey administration. But I'll take a moment and pause to explain what top box percentage is. On each of the standard survey items, and for students, there are 20, respondents have the opportunity to respond from a score of 1, which is strongly disagree, to a 5, which is strongly agree. The top box percentage is your percentage of responses that are a 5, the top box on the survey. And we see that as a metric of high satisfaction in an organization or around an experience, and like to call that out for our partners as an element of their understanding. You can see your student results, particularly on your overall mean, when we compare those results to our national benchmark percentiles. You have a real celebration in terms of the experience on this, your student experience as they're sharing through this survey. Your overall mean is coming in at a ranking of that 70th percentile. So just a really solid place and great news overall in terms of the experiences that your students are sharing on this survey. What I'll also take a slower moment on the student survey to share with you is a little bit about that table 2 on this slide, which is called a Net Promoter Score. This question on the survey asks students, how likely are you to recommend your school as a good place to learn? Unlike those other survey items where responses are a 1 to a 5, on the Net Promoter question, respondents can select a 0 all the way up to a 10 as their response. And so what you'll see listed underneath where it says Net Promoter Organization are a couple of different breakdowns of responses that I'll just take a moment on this slide to talk you through. Your promoters are the percent of responses that are a 9 or a 10. We see those as real champions of their experience in your school and in your district. Passives on that range, again, of 0 to 10, are folks that are responding a 7 or an 8. And detractors have a much larger range in a Net Promoter Score responses. They will be responding from a 0 to a 6. And so you can see really what the Net Promoter Score is doing is really helping you understand deep levels of satisfaction. Our recommendation is any positive Net Promoter Score is a really strong position to be in. When we start to see Net Promoter Scores of somewhere in the range of 30 or above, we would call those extremely strong. But you'll notice you're sitting here in a positive range and an increase over last year in terms of your overall student experience as they reported on this survey. So lots to celebrate there in the great work that's happening in your district. We'll shift to some of the individual questions. I know that the slide is likely very small for folks who might be viewing in the space tonight, but I believe the board has access to this information. We'll call out just a couple of shifts and changes that, again, I think are great opportunities to see the targeted work that's been happening in your district. A few ones just to notice in terms of important levels of growth, 2 particular that relate to student experience of safety in the school and on the bus. So you can see those called out in 4 and 8. And in fact, if I go into even a deeper level of our benchmarking data, that question number 4 of your students reporting they feel safe at school, that falls between the 75th and 80th percentile. So really strong responses in terms of student safety as if we compare their responses to other students nationally, as well as in that question number 8, safety on the bus. That response for the 2024 survey window comes in between the 70th and the 75th percentile. So again, just really strong experiences from your students as we're seeing play out on the survey this spring. We'll shift now, and I'll move a little bit quicker through some of these introductory pieces to the parent and caregiver survey. So you'll notice here between 2023 and 2024, a decline in the participation from one survey administration to the other, but a relatively stable overall mean between the 2 surveys, and just a slight uptick in the percentage of that top box responses. Again, those 5 out of 5 responses for your organization. We'll notice here that our percentile does fall into that first quartile, so some opportunity to get curious and continue to get curious and learn about our parent and caregiver experience through the district. And what you'll see on this slide, unlike our students who only responded on that Net Promoter question to their experience in their school, adults who take the experience survey provide a Net Promoter response on both the district or the organization as a whole and their child's school. And so you can see a relatively stable result, a small shift in both of those, but again, both in that positive score for Net Promoter, which is where we'd like to see that. I'll offer one distinction on this slide of note. Typical to what we see in partners across the country, the organizational score is quite typically a little bit lower than folks report their experience with their individual school. We can certainly understand having more interactions with their child's school, with the great professionals that work there, and perhaps less personal interactions with the organization as a whole. And so that's very typical for us to see a slightly more favorable rating the closer we are to experiencing those interactions on a daily or more frequent basis. Parents and caregivers have 15 questions that they respond to, and just like the students, will call out a couple of those areas. You can see there was a definite connection on a few of these that we wanted to call out for you. You'll notice question 3 and 13 both speak to the level of feedback that a parent or caregiver is receiving from their child's school. You'll note the increase that we called out in both of those, as well as that relatively stable mean, and just an uptick just slightly on that overall mean from your parents and caregivers. And next, we'll move to that third survey, which was your employee survey. You'll notice we did see a decrease in participation, a slight decrease in the mean, as well as about a 3% decrease in that top box percentage in this survey administration. That does place you again in that first quartile, an opportunity as your team is doing that heavy lifting of understanding experiences so that there can be continued conversation and some action planning done there. And we'll also highlight for you here the shifts in the employee net promoter score. So I'll call your eyes first to that bottom score, the immediate work area. For employees, the questions are, would they recommend their school as a great place to work, and then their organization? Again, you see that distinction between a more positive experience with their immediate work environment and some differences as we look at the organization. You can see in orange the shift between the spring 2023 and 2024 survey results for you on that slide. And then finally, we'll just turn briefly here to the 20 items on the employee experience survey and call out a couple of trends as we worked through the results. So on number 5, believing that leaders in folks and your employees' immediate work environment are genuinely concerned for their welfare, saw a slight uptick in that, but a relatively stable positive result. We did box together items 11, 12, and 13. Those all speak to organizational level experiences, and you can see a bit of a shift in responses from 23, 24, as well as on that last item on the survey, number 20, staff reporting that they feel they have a sense of pride where they work, seeing a little bit of shift in that number as well, in addition to the overall mean. So that was a lot of information. I want to invite Dr. Jenny up, who I believe is going to provide some additional context for how the team is working around the results.
Thank you, Dr. Casey. Chair Franz, Superintendent Thomas, members of the board. I'm just going to speak a little bit about our survey rollout process. For those of you who are aware of what we did last year, it's very similar. I've taken all of the survey results and filtered them by school and in sometimes programs. So for example, Bridges and Sage and MnCAPS have their own reports. The rest of the reports come at a building level. Those have all been distributed to the building or program leaders. And then those individual leaders are taking their data back to their individual building instructional leadership teams, working through that information, and then figuring out what may have worked or may not have worked in terms of their school improvement process from last year, and then looking at it again in preparation for next year. One of the things that we noticed during that initial rollout meeting was that I think the saying is measure what matters. A lot of our school improvement processes that we implemented last year were areas that we saw changes in the survey. For example, there was an identification of bus safety as an issue that we wanted to address this year. And then we had some additional hires in the safety area to really beef up that part of our work, and we saw that reflected in the survey. There's also a number of schools that implemented positive messages home and increased communications with their families as a school improvement strategy, and that was another area that we saw improve. So overall, we saw changes in areas that we really spent our time and effort looking into and trying to make changes in those areas. And then each school has a little bit of a different process or maybe a slightly different nuance to their data that they're unpacking at that school level and then planning for their improvement process for next year.
Thank you, team. And so with that, Chair Franz, I'll turn it to the board for any questions.
Okay, so why don't we start with questions? And please direct who you would like to answer the question.
I can start. I have a question. Last year, there was about 6,000 comments, knowing that the participation rate dropped off on several of these categories. Can you give us a clear understanding of how many comments? Did the comments go up or down, or are you still at the same number of comments compared to last year?
I have not, I'm sorry, Director Atkinson, I have not gone through the comments to do a comparison over numerical values year over year. Sorry, I haven't counted that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yep.
It was stated last year, so.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I actually have a question about the parent caregiver slide that is table number 2, the Net Promoter Score, and I think this might be a question for Dr. Casey. What I'm curious about is on the first page, basically the overall score went down, but then when we go to the next graph, our overall mean went up. Can you help me understand why that would be the case?
Yep, so let me double check. So are you just asking I just want to clarify the question so that I address it correctly. Are you asking me to explain the overall mean versus the change in the Net Promoter Score?
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, yep, absolutely. So there's two, and I'm just going to reshare my screen so that we're all looking at the same information. So it's just spinning a bit on my end. Okay, so on the parent caregiver score here, we see the overall mean, which is essentially the average of those 15 questions that parents and caregivers have the opportunity to respond to. The Net Promoter Score, these are 2 additional questions beyond the 15 on that block that you saw on that next slide. There is one question that asks parents and caregivers to recommend their organization or district as a great place to learn. And the second one asks about their child's school as a great place to learn. Did that help?
Yeah, so basically they're different questions, different set of questions. So when asked specifically, the score went down, but when asked the questions very specifically, 1 through 15, the overall mean went up slightly. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that makes sense.
So
Thank you.
May, yeah, that's a very good distinction. So you may see some change here right? And there are questions on here that are very similar to that Net Promoter Score. What I would highlight as the difference on Net Promoter is that 0 to 10 range.
Right.
So folks really have an opportunity on a larger scale to plot where they believe their experience is best represented.
And I appreciate you explaining that. I went back and watched last year's board meeting just to better understand this, but you did a fantastic job, so thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, you bet.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? In the meantime, I'd like to ask a question, and that's based upon the parents and the lower participation rates. Could you give me an idea on the timing of the survey? Because I'm trying to understand why we had such a drop-off in participation rates, not by students, but by parent and caregivers and our staff. Were there a lot of surveys going on at that time? Was it... do you guys can figure out any reason why the participation drop-off was so big?
We did have a very slight adjustment in the window as compared to last year based on the feedback from teachers and the pacing in terms of their work in the schools. But it was only about, I believe, a 2-week difference. So I don't think the window would explain a 1,000-person drop in the parent caregiver responses. So I don't have a good explanation of why that dropped. We purposely do this survey at a time while we're not doing other surveys, and we also purposely did it before the strategic planning process to try and differentiate that, because if you do have multiple surveys going out at once, you can get some confusion on which ones you've completed and which ones you haven't. So there wasn't any major changes other than that slight window change, and I don't have a good explanation of why it dropped off so much.
Do we have any people saying, hey, I never saw it? Or was the method of delivery different at all, or?
The communication plan was the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as a parent,
Kevin, roughly?
February?
I was gonna say, I had it in my email as March 6th through March 15th is what I had, that I looked up on my email. So I looked it up just to be for certain about that. And I may be wrong.
Okay, I can double check on that. I'm pretty sure it started at the end of February, but that could have been just the teacher side of things, and the student ones. It did get pushed a little bit back, but we were also conscious not to have it go over spring break because we know that really impacts survey responses. And again, that shift was based on teacher feedback. But it was maybe a 2-week shift in the window.
Yeah, and we did actually receive it twice, or several times. We received it via email, so I think it was well communicated, the survey, so. I have another question. Do you ever break it out by school? I know you said you'd break it out by school for evaluating the results, but for the bigger picture, do you ever break it out by elementary and secondary, middle, high school?
Levels and types of staff?
No, just overall, like the general survey. I know it's done by school, but do you ever break it out where you're looking at just our elementary, just our middle, just our high school, or not? I mean, I know we're looking at apples to apples comparison, from last year, which I really appreciate, but I'm just curious. I think it'd be interesting to see that.
Yeah, thank you, Director Atkinson. We have thought about that, and I think ideally we would break it out by level, but because of our size, our reporting at the high school level identifies the school and also identifies a specific leader. And so, and now technically our middle schools are merged into one as well. And so I think there's been a hesitation in the past because it does identify an individual school by doing that. If we had multiple of each of the secondary levels, I think it would be important to see that breakout because there are differences. But that's been the reason why we haven't done it, is because of the single site in the middle and high.
If I may add just one comment around the processing of that data, are certainly specifically our elementary principals have come together, and our full administrative team did come together last spring and will do so again this year at our end-of-the-year retreat, sharing among our entire team some commonalities as well as differences. And for example, specifically to the earlier point that Dr. Zumbush made about the focus on bus safety, that was a common across elementaries. And so that was and frankly at the middle school as well, so that was a concentrated effort working with our deans of students and our administrative structure to put some systems in place in collaboration with our bus drivers. So there definitely is that collaboration among buildings within levels.
Appreciate that.
I have a follow-up question on that, because I had a question about the parents or caregivers, because we have parents or guardians, et cetera, who have students that spread across all three, elementary, middle, and high school. How would that get broken out from their perspective?
Dr. Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they are invited to take this survey one time per level, thinking about each individual child as they fill out the survey, because an individual parent might have a very different experience at the different levels, and so they fill out the survey indicating the school and then thinking about that child that's at that school, and then do it per child if they choose to.
Would that occur with, let's say, MinCaps in the high school, SAGE, and the regular elementary? Is
It
that the way?
would.
Okay, that's, because I wrote that down, that you said you kind of broke out the Bridges, SAGE, and MinCaps program.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's really up to that individual parent. If they don't necessarily have feedback on one or the other, they can select which one they would like to use. But yeah, it's kind of up to the individual parent how they'd like to provide the feedback. But they're asked to take it per child if they want.
I appreciate everything you've done. I'm looking forward to seeing the comments, so thank you for the transparency on that. As a board director, I would like to, take a deeper dive into the employee concerns to really understand that score last year was concerning to me, and now we've definitely not done better this year. So I appreciate you bringing this forward so that we can take a deeper dive to better understand how we can support our staff in the district. Thank you.
And you will be summarizing those comments, or no?
I believe that the redaction process has started. It does take quite a bit of time because of the amount of comments. I do think it is less. I don't have the number in front of me either, but should be slightly less, but it's still quite a bit of work to go through and redact that document, and I believe it's already in process.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I'll just comment that, I'm concerned about the employee score and, we know we have work to do there, and I know that's all on the radar, especially when it comes to the strategic plan. So, I just want to acknowledge that, our employees are our best asset, and I'd hate to not acknowledge that.
Okay, thank you very much, very, very much, Dr. Casey. I know this is a lot of work, and Director Zumbush. This is an incredible report, lots of detail. We look forward to more and further discussions based upon the results. Next on the agenda is the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. There is no board action requested on this. And so I'm going to hand this off to Director Oak.
Thank you, Chair Franz, Superintendent Dr. Michael Thomas, directors of the board. As part of our annual compliance, every year our APAC would meet to take a vote on whether or not they concur with the district's offering, programmatic offering to our Native students here. If the vote is non-concurrent, then a written recommendation will be also provided to the board. The vote was taken on February 21st, and the vote was not concurrent. We were originally scheduled to present the written recommendations on April 8th. However, our APAC committee did ask for a little bit more time, which is why we moved it to today. The school board does have a responsibility to respond within 60 days to the written recommendation to both the APAC and the Office of Indian Education. So at this moment, I would like to invite the chair of our APAC, Ms. Katrina LaRock Russo, and our vice chair, Bridget Purdy, to the podium to present the written recommendation.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, I'll move this a little bit since there's two of us. All right, dear members of the school board, as the chairperson of the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, I am reaching out on behalf of our committee to submit our vote of non-concurrence for the 2023 to 2024 school year per the requirements of the Minnesota Statutes 2023, Section 124D.78. The decision to issue a non-concurrence vote has not been taken lightly. It comes after persistent and earnest attempts to engage with the district in addressing the challenges faced by our students. It is with regret that I note the substantial gap between the district's commitments and the tangible outcomes thus far. The vote of non-concurrence from last year in the district's response to the issues APAC presented does not seem to have been brought to fruition, but on the district level. I'm just going to stop for 1 second. This is your response from last year, and all of the orange that is highlighted in this response are things that have not been done. So quite a few. Excuse me. Additionally, the absence of actionable SMART goals developed collaboratively with APAC is a clear indicator of the district's reluctance to commit to the educational advancement of our American Indian students. In our previous communications, we highlighted several critical areas where the district's actions must match the proactive approach that our students' educational needs demand. The lack of consistent participation in our meetings, particularly by crucial district representatives, and the absence of an actionable plan to address the academic achievement gap are areas of significant concern. The Executive Committee is also troubled by the need for more transparency in financial and curriculum development matters. The district needs to understand that our objective is not to assign blame, but to foster a stronger, more effective partnership that prioritizes our students' well-being and educational success. In that spirit, we wish to outline the following recommendations. Enhance data management. Advocate for the adoption of and Indian education staff access to a comprehensive student tracking system tailored to identify the unique needs of American Indian students. This advanced system should integrate a variety of indicators such as attendance records, class participation levels, and social emotional factors, aiming to facilitate early identification and support for at-risk students. We propose a target of improving identification rates by 20% within the next academic semester. Targeted program development. Call on the district to initiate and implement bespoke mentoring programs crafted with the cultural nuances and specific needs of American Indian students in mind. We aim to see these programs support at least 30% of our at-risk student population, providing them with the mentorship and guidance necessary for their academic and personal growth. Professional development. Insist on a district-wide professional development initiative emphasizing cultural competency as a foundational element. This program should be obligatory for all educational staff with a strategic goal of achieving full participation within the school year, thereby ensuing a universally informed and culturally adept faculty. Strategic planning and accountability. Demand the immediate establishment of a strategic planning process that outlines concrete objectives, quantifiable performance indicators, and an explicit timeline committed to closing the academic achievement gap. This strategy should be transparent with regular updates to APAC and the community to ensure accountability and shared progress. Focus data management training. Recommend the immediate implementation of specialized training for the Indian education staff in data management, curriculum development, inclusivity, and student empowerment. This initiative should be designed to empower Indian education staff with the tools to effectively track and advocate for at-risk American Indian students, thereby creating a direct line for teachers to communicate concerns and collaborate on interventions. Cultural competence and sensitivity training. Implement a continuous training program to deepen district staff's understanding of American Indian cultures, bolstering a school-wide ethos of empathy and respect for diversity. Leadership and advocacy skill development. Foster a series of developmental workshops to enhance Indian education staff's leadership and advocacy skills, ensuring they can effectively navigate and influence educational policies and initiatives that impact American Indian students. inclusive representation in schools, foster an inclusive and empowering environment for Native American students with Minnesota tribal nation flags in all schools. Artwork and posters by Native American artists can provide a sense of pride to our students. Bullying and harassment. The continuation of bullying and racist acts committed towards Native students by their non-Native peers remains a critical concern. The steps outlined to improve the reporting system and create a more inclusive environment have either not been implemented or have failed to reduce these harmful incidents effectively. There has been discussion about the enrollment process into the district and how you list your child's race may possibly affect their involvement into the Indian education program. Clarification to the parents during the enrollment process should be crucial to determining if the parents would like their children to join the Indian education program. In conclusion, while we stand firm on these recommendations, we remain open to dialogue and are prepared to assist the district in translating these objectives into reality. We expect a comprehensive and thoughtful response to each recommendation within the 60-day response period stipulated by law. The APAC is committed to a collaborative approach and looks forward to the district's renewed dedication, which will bring about the changes our students deserve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Sam, does anyone have any questions for Sam?
I do actually, Sam. One of the things that, well, first of all, thank you for coming forward and sharing your concerns and your willingness to continue to collaborate with the district to make improvements. It's always important that we work to be better. And one of the things when I was reading this letter and I read about Minnesota Statute 124D.78 is I read the statute and it states in here that the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee must develop its recommendations in consultation with the Curriculum Advisory Committee. And I serve on the Curriculum Advisory Committee, and we have not collaborated with the American Indian Parental Advisory Committee. And I'm wondering if that's one way that we could enhance our relationship and start to address some of these concerns.
That is definitely an opportunity for us to take part in, for sure. In the past, American Indian Ed program was overseen by the Teaching and Learning Department and the Equity Department my first year here. So there was more collaboration at that time. This year, there definitely could be a more of an opportunity for that to happen.
Well, I think based on the fact that it's written in the statute, it has to happen. I mean, it's similar to when I started on the Curriculum Advisory Committee. We weren't meeting the statute with the right parent to community members, and we made that adjustment by recruiting.
That is not the correct statement.
It is, actually, and I don't want to go down that path, but it is correct, and that's why we made the adjustments we did. So I think that it's definitely something that we can look at. The other thing I wanted to get clarification on is they mentioned under targeted program development, call on the district to initiate and implement bespoke mentoring programs. Could you elaborate a little bit more about what that is and how it's being done in other districts?
I'm not aware.
Don't have an APIC to it? Okay, sorry, if they're available for questions. I'm just curious, I know, I was wondering if it's implemented at Shakopee or it's called the bespoke mentoring programs. I know we do some mentoring programs, bespoke, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we had talked before about having a mentoring program, and it was just kind of something that was talked about in the sense of having, like, the older students mentor the younger students. Our thought process is kind of more along the lines of having, adults that are mentoring the children. So there is some kind of, life experience there that we feel it would be really important to have that for the students, to have that sense of pride when it comes to things, and to also have more of a greater understanding when it comes to, life and things along those lines, different things for the American Indian students that the district can do so that they are ensured that they are thought of when it comes to the district. I was an American Indian education student when I was in school, and I definitely did not feel that way. My children go to school here, they're in elementary school, and they don't feel that way at school because of the things that happen, in which we understand kids are kids. But to have more of like an inclusivity for them, by having more people than just having one person come see them, once a month. that we feel it'd be important for the kids to have other mentors in the community or at the district level that can help them when it comes to things that they feel like they're either falling behind in or they don't know who to talk to when it comes to things. And I would like to say we have asked this year to meet with the curriculum writers a few times, and then we never heard anything back. So we kind of just assumed that it wasn't going to happen. So, but we have asked.
We
staff.
have an actual parental, or we have a curriculum committee that you may have heard some members speak on this evening that are members of the committee. So we have an actual parent advisory committee.
Yeah.
That, and that's what it relates to in
Yeah.
statute, is having the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee work together on that.
Yes,
So-
yes. And we've asked for names and things along those lines, and we have not been given them. So we did reach, we tried.
Thank you
So,
for that.
thank you.
Yep.
I just wanted to add an extra comment. Over this past year, Freddie and Mercedes have worked very closely with our secondary curriculum specialists there to design program and provide professional development to teachers. So there has been collaboration with the curriculum department, but not specifically with the curriculum advisory committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we did have representation on the curriculum committee prior to that, but it has changed, so. Okay, next on the list is the middle school math curriculum report.
Thank you, Chair France and Board Directors. Tonight, we will be providing a final report to the board around our middle school math curriculum. And this has been something that we have been engaged in all year long. It is one that has gone down a variety of paths for experiences with students, with our staff. You've heard some conversations tonight. And I want the board and the community to understand that we do listen to feedback that we are receiving. And we also know that we'll be sharing some of the data information with you all tonight too, that we balance between what we hear through public comments, we balance what we hear from our direct student surveys, and what we hear from our Teaching and Learning Advisory Committee. And we also weigh heavily on the experts that are our teachers in the classrooms. You know, I'm not a math teacher. I do rely upon content experts to bring that perspective as well. And so tonight we'll be sharing with you all of our findings to date, and then allow you all to ask any questions that you might have. And you know, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I've heard about the math curriculum is, you know, it's not just teaching numbers, and yes, it does change how we teach, and that I think people can understand that and appreciate that. But I think there's been a lot of push around, you know, what's with the social emotional aspects of this curriculum, and is this being, you know, politicized and pushed by a certain group and things of that nature. I mean, I hear these comments, and we see emails that come in that kind of speak to some of that. So I just want folks in our community and the board to understand that when we're looking at a math curriculum, we're looking at first and foremost, one, how does it align to math content and that is aligned to our state standards? That's a non-negotiable. And I will say that there's not a single curriculum that is published that doesn't encompass strategies to build community within your classroom as you get ready for that lesson plan. Whether it's in the direct curriculum or if it's just, as all of our staff understand, it's just good practice to have deep relationships with your students. That relational connection, the more I know about my students, the more I can tie that lived experience into my actual teaching and use, you know, Michael's example of maybe that family vacation they took, and then, hey, let's talk a little bit about calculating mileage that you went from here to Arkansas, or whatever it might be. Those little personal connections make a huge difference. So this is centered on core math instruction, and we'll hear from some of that tonight. And just, I'll close with this sharing with some of the comments you heard tonight about math processes. understand that basic math concepts are still going to be taught in this curriculum, but shifting to a thinking math and understanding process behind math is a critical component to this curriculum. And I was talking with a superintendent who recently adopted this over the past couple of years. And, the superintendent shared with me some of the challenges that they were having in terms of the process and the change of a curriculum. And the superintendent shared something that was really, I guess, I don't want to say it's profound, but the way that they described it really kind of cemented some thinking for me that really helped me understand how we can really begin to speak about some process. And they noted that if I get a flat tire, I know the answer. The answer is I need to change my tire. And paralleling that to the math, there are many kids who know the answers to math. The question is, with that flat tire or just knowing the answer, do you know the process of getting to that answer? Do you know where the tire jack is? Do you know where you mount that jack so you don't break a tie rod? Do you know how much pressure and distance you have in that spare to be able to drive to the next nearest gas station to get it changed? All that process behind the answer is just as important as the answer. And I just thought that was a good way of illustrating, as math curriculum is being published, aligning more towards thinking mathematicians versus just folks who can memorize facts. That's going to be a critical conversation that we have to have with ourselves and with our students as Minnesota standards have ratcheted up. Just as much as we see the war on literacy in this state, I think we are seeing with our new math standards very much ratcheted up. So they are not dumbing down standards. They're saying kids need to be able to compete. And curriculum that's coming out now needs to be aligned to the new standards that are emerging. And, I think we had a work session with you all, several months ago talking about some of the lag between standards and curriculum publishers. And then add in the assessment equation, which has sometimes even further lags. So it's not just a simple adoption, and it's not something that we take lightly as an administrative team. And it is something that we wanted the board to have, ample discussion with, and then also give you some time to kind of process. And, between now and when we are going to be asking you to take some action. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Edwards and team for the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Chair Franz, members of the board. Definitely want to take you through our presentation tonight and provide additional context to the work that's been done over the course of the last year plus, and then be able to respond, as Dr. Thomas pointed out, to further inquiry that you might have. So I want to begin with the timeline. And one of the things that I want to point out is the standards, as Dr. Thomas spoke about, have been going through review and change, and we are anticipating the conclusion of the standards. Some of that is out of our control as a school district and all school districts across the state of Minnesota. But the standards have been proposed, and the 22 standards are there. And with that in mind, we also began in the school year 21-22 understanding that we were not satisfied with our results with the current standards and our performance. And with that, we took a look at how do we bring about improved results. And we began a very comprehensive look, as is pointed out here, where at each of our sites there was work being done around a math vision. And that was a K-5, all staff, all classroom teaching staff and special education staff were included in that process. At the secondary level, we have obviously specialists who specialize in math instruction, as well as our special education as well as our special education teachers who are engaged in math instruction as well. So we began that work in 21-22, and we identified at the conclusion of that work that we were ready to engage in math pilot at the elementary level. And you may recall that just over a year ago, we brought the conclusion of that to you here as a board in April, and we adopted the Bridges math curriculum. I want to speak just briefly about that. Well, I know tonight's presentation is about our middle school math. I think from a contextual understanding, to speak about the strength of that implementation that our amazing K-5 teachers have engaged in this year to bring about a significant change in their practices aligned with the National Council of Mathematics, aligned with our state standards, and they have really begun to shift the work with their students to develop them, as Dr. Thomas pointed out, of mathematicians. That has been a focus of our work, and just amazing job of implementation. We're nearing the end of year one of implementation in our Bridges math curriculum, and I want to take this opportunity as we're speaking about that to provide a note of congratulations to our K-5 teachers for the amazing work, and our team that has supported them in the Learning Achievement and Innovation Office, specifically Gwen Molden and our peer coaches, all who have been a part of making it be a successful year one implementation and are excited for our continued journey. And I happened to see or receive an email questioning whether we were continuing with our Bridges implementation. Let me clarify that right here and now. That is continuing. There's no question about that we are confident in the work that has been done, and we recognize there's more work to be done, and we're excited about continuing on that journey. Then about the same time that or around the time that we brought forward a recommendation for Bridges implementation, we also had, it was time to look at what we wanted to do at the middle school level. Again, we had been engaged, our middle school staff had been engaged in the Math Vision process, and at that time we came together and with the team of math teachers at the middle school level and identified some curriculum resources that we wanted to explore, and we explored that in the March-April timeframe, if memory serves me correctly. We looked at Open Up Curriculum, STEM Scopes, Reveal, CMP, which is out of the University of Michigan, and CPM. Now, if that's not confusing, I recognize that it is. But we did look at those curriculums and consider those, and as a group of middle school math teachers at that time, it was determined that the curriculum that was frankly excited us the most, also aligned with the recently adopted Bridges curriculum at the K-5 level and aligned with the incoming standards. Felt that CPM was the curriculum that we wanted to pilot, felt that the others had gaps that were not worthy of a pilot, frankly, and that's how we landed on CPM as our pilot. We had 5 classrooms that were engaged in that pilot this year, and we are projecting forward, pending board approval, that we would be able to move forward with the middle school implementation. We've referenced this many times in our conversations around this topic, but just wanted to call it to your attention again, this Math Vision that was really what I would describe as a grassroots effort among our teaching staff that came from how we arrived at this, came from taking feedback from our students. When we formed the Math Vision, we interviewed, did focus groups with students across the system, and you might recall giving some detail or seeing some detail, having some presented to you around those conversations when we presented the elementary math curriculum for adoption a year ago. But you might recall when colleague Gwen Molden was up here and she spoke about some of the fun that they as a team had with the comments that kindergartners and first graders said about their experience with math. And Some of those comments also were equally entertaining from our team as they moved on to the middle and high school, and hearing our students reflect upon their experience in math. And that's what this vision was formed from, was hearing from our students first and foremost. And our staff then came together and created this math vision that we feel very strongly about in its alignment with the standards. And I want to talk a little bit about that at this time. The state standards, the 2022 state standards that we're awaiting final movement and implementation, and we feel good that we're slightly ahead of the game, possibly, but in comparison, maybe we are not. We definitely, again, back to the data, recognized a few years ago that we needed to make some changes. So as you see on this slide, we see that there's great alignment with the language that's the readiness standards from the new state standards for future-ready students that we will be producing as a result of their experience in Prior Lake Savage area schools specific to math. And we feel that these are, again, on the right-hand column, those are reflected in our vision that we created. Then furthermore, as I mentioned earlier, as we are looking at aligning with our curriculum standards and what we were hoping to realize in our vision, we found alignment, once again, with the CPM vision and mission, as is presented here, that aligned, once again, to our state standards. The three pillars are really the base of our CPM pilot and the work that our teachers have shared with us throughout the process, some of whom shared some information with you as a board back in February, some of whom shared information with our teaching and learning advisory in March, as well as all members had an opportunity to share in our April teaching and learning advisory. And they spoke about specifically what does this look like in the classroom, collaborative learning, that notion of students being mathematicians at a deep level and being able to engage with their understanding of the math concepts as they speak with their classmates and benefit from that interaction with their fellow classmates. The problem-based learning, the real-world problems that really students need to be able to tackle as they apply their mathematical understanding. And then when they get engaged in this notion of understanding math, if you don't get it this time, you're going to come back and you're going to have another opportunity to either deepen that understanding, take it to that next level, or maybe with the help of the teacher and your classmates, come to a first-time understanding. But it's not going to be one and done, as possibly traditionally, sometimes that has been the case in the past. We move on. We're done with that particular concept. If you didn't understand that concept, you might continue to struggle because of the building blocks of those concepts. So we want to make sure that that is understanding that stays with our students as they go throughout their school experience with us and certainly beyond into the future. One of the distinctions we want to clarify here from previous questions that we've been that have been posed to us as we've been making presentations in various contexts, as was mentioned earlier, multiple teaching and learning advisory committee meetings, and understanding that the CPM curriculum has a version called Core Connections. When we were looking to pilot, there was the new version coming out, and that is the one that we chose to pilot because it aligned with the state standards. And as our teachers were looking at that particular and our pilot teachers went to the training, they had an opportunity to understand what all these elements meant and how these opportunities with the new curriculum Inspiring Connections were a benefit to considering for our adoption. And as you had a fortunate opportunity this evening to hear from a couple of our teachers who have been deeply engaged in the work, they definitely have seen the value of the resources provided by the Inspiring Connections curriculum. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Zumbush.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, members of the board, Director Franz, Superintendent Thomas. I want to go over a little bit of implementation science research. This is something that we lean on quite a bit for our implementation processes here in PLSAS. And here is just some snippets of some of the research of implementation science. And here just reflected on some of what Dr. Edwards was saying, that the buy-in that teachers have towards a particular resource or program is really essential for that fidelity of implementation. So there's been some questions over time about other districts or schools that may have the same resource, but I wanted to clarify that we cannot compare sole outcomes of other districts without understanding the details of implementation and what that looks like from a fidelity standpoint. We do know that fidelity increases the higher our teachers are bought into a particular resource. This is just a basic grid of implementation science that shows how you can end up getting outcomes that may or may not be aligned with what we would anticipate for a particular resource or program. So if we have a scenario where we have low fidelity to implementation of whatever our resource is, and we have high outcomes, we can't necessarily attribute that to the program because we don't have the implementation fidelity to hang that on. The only way we can attribute high outcomes to a program is if we also have that high fidelity. So again, just wanted to bring forward the point of the importance of implementation fidelity when looking at outcomes and the role that the teacher plays in that implementation. This is an overview of the student data that was collected during class. This was a participatory process where students were asked questions and wrote their answers on Post-it notes and came up to posters and had small discussions if they wanted to at the poster charts during their class. So any student who was attending class that day was asked to participate, obviously not forced to participate, but that was done in February, I believe. These are the number of students that are in each of the pilot levels. We have some 5th and 6th grade students that are in the pilot classes, as well as the majority of our pilot students were in 7th grade. This is really important because we only have one teacher teaching at the 5th and 6th grade level and one teacher at the 8th grade level. So the pilot data is really focused in on that 7th grade level so that we can ensure the confidentiality of that data, both at the teacher and the student level. These were the basic questions that we asked the students and asked them to respond to. And then I coded all of the data into the major themes and categories by question. These are obviously in small font, but they're all in the packet. Everything good, bad, and ugly is on here. These were the major themes that we saw about what students do during their math class. As we've heard from a lot of different individuals, there's a lot of partner or group or hands-on activities. The students are also working on homework or independent work and solving problems, and they're listening and paying attention to the teacher. Each of these sub-bullets are direct quotations from students in those classes. We're also asking about what the teacher is doing during math. This was modeled after the Bridges implementation as well. These were the same interview questions that we did for Bridges. So we're asking a little bit about what the teacher does. Obviously, they're teaching and providing instruction, but also walking around the classroom and providing support for student work. I just wanted to point out a little bit about the some of the quotations that really talk about the connections to real life and how things are relatable for them. What are your favorite things about math? You'll see some of the same themes in the students' favorite things and least favorite things. So just acknowledging that there's a wide range of opinions, and we want to hear all of them and listen to all of the student responses. In terms of the activities and lessons, they really enjoy the hands-on activities. There was a particular activity that had just occurred in the class where there was bubbles and they were measuring diameter and circumference, and the students were very excited about that activity. So I think we came in post bubble day, so that was a popular topic of conversation. A lot of students did talk about enjoying working in different groups. You will also see that that was one of their major complaints. So just holding both of those in this space, it was not a unanimous at all. Lots of different student opinions, and middle schoolers certainly don't have any hesitation sharing their opinions with us. So there were some positive responses about working with groups. Some people really enjoyed switching it and working with different people. Some students really liked the notebook and the materials because the lessons and their notes and their drawings and their reflections are all in one place, and some students really liked that. What do they not enjoy about it? Homework. The students talked quite a bit about homework, and it ran the gamut. Students felt like they had too much homework, not enough homework. There wasn't enough time in class to complete it. There were some reflections on misalignment between the content that was taught and the homework, some confusion. They wanted an answer key to be able to check their work at home. A lot of students also mentioned that they don't like working in groups. They don't like it when the people in their group didn't engage, or they're forced to work with random people. And then overall, there was feedback on the curriculum saying it was confusing, challenging, not challenging enough, and they miss the old way of teaching, and they don't like explaining their answers. And I think this one is maybe up in our office here. The new curriculum is weird. I think that pretty much sums up pretty well what the students were feeling. We also asked what questions do they have, because I think students ask amazing questions and ones that we don't necessarily think of. So they want more information about why are we doing things this way? What's wrong with the old way? Why are we teaching like this? And so that's just an opportunity to potentially hear some of their questions and engage them in conversation. They also wanted to know from their teachers, do you like it? How do you like it compared to the old curriculum? So I think just there was a lot of noticing that things were very different from before. And then obviously they have great questions like, why are they called a VNPS? I don't know either. They're they're whiteboards, but the teachers, I'm sure, know exactly why they're called VNPSs. Okay, so moving along from student feedback, this was not an original data slide, but it was added based on some questions that we received. There were some questions about how students are doing grade-wise in their class. Again, I'm focusing just on 7th grade data because that was the majority of the students, and that doesn't identify any students or teachers. Here you can see that the non-pilot students in 7th grade are receiving a higher percentage of A's in the non-pilot classes as of semester 1. This, I just want to point out, is not comparing apples to oranges because we have a very different curriculum. They both have different assessment measures built into the curriculum. There's also a major difference in terms of the retake policy between the two. So just wanted to be responsive and transparent. Yes, there are more students getting A's in the non-pilot class. We do have some good explanations on why that is the case, and also a potential question of the value of whether that's a way of assessing a curriculum or not. I think, I think using the same metrics that we have through another source of measurement would be a more accurate representation to measure learning. Here you can see a comparison of FastBridge mid-year data. We do not have spring data yet. That's not available. We have we're about 100 short of sixth grade data coming in. We only have about 100 seventh grade and 100 eighth graders that have taken the FastBridge so far, so we do not have spring data to share with you today. But here you can see that the pilot students started the year with a much higher percentage of students that were on track according to our FastBridge assessment screener. In the blue is this percentage of students that were on track in the fall in both the pilot and non-pilot. So the pilot classrooms were decided by teacher opt-in. So we do have a difference here in that starting percentage of proficiency. It went down a little bit for the pilot classrooms and went down a little bit more for the non-pilot classrooms. We will certainly be looking at spring data when we have it available. This was also added per request, some additional longitudinal FastBridge data. A couple of things to keep in mind here. FastBridge does not recommend that you look at year-over-year comparisons of the data. It's more within-year comparison. This was more of a question about what do we see in the trends over time. This is sixth grade longitudinal data for 2 years ago, last year, and this year. Again, obviously missing the spring data. Here you can see the trend generally is we have seen a little bit of a decrease from fall to winter and then a little bit of an increase up in the spring. For our seventh grade data, we don't really have as consistent of a trend. Again, this is 2 years ago, last year, and this year are 3 different screening windows, fall, winter, and spring, to kind of look at the trajectory of what we've had over time. This includes all students. These are not just pilot or non-pilot. These are all students. And then similarly, the 8th grade longitudinal data to see the trends over time. We were also asked to bring forward MCA data. So this is the longitudinal trend of our 6th grade math data. It's the percentage of students proficient as measured by the MCAs. And here you can see our trajectory over time as it compares to the state. Similarly, this is the trajectory for 7th grade, and then finally our trajectory for 8th grade. We also ran teacher focus groups for the pilot teachers. This was an early formalization of the feedback from teachers. We've obviously heard a lot since we've conducted these focus groups from them as well. But here are just the major themes that we identified during that formal focus group opportunity. A lot of the teachers expressed an emotional roller coaster of just what it's like to be a pilot teacher. It's very challenging to try and figure out a new curriculum as you go through the year and learn all of the new components. And so they recognize the challenge of that. They also identified some of the challenges and benefits of the curricular material, and then they gave some implementation insights and suggestions. So there's a lot of really great things that we've learned over the pilot year. I know I've said this before, but when we look at pilot data, we are looking in one sense to decide what curriculum to adopt, but more importantly, we are understanding all of the other contextual factors that we need to take into account to make sure that we have strong fidelity to implementation. And so recording all of the responses from all the different stakeholder groups is really important for us to understand the things that we need to take into account to make sure that we implement whatever curriculum we implement with that high level of fidelity. This is the parent survey. In the interest of transparency, we did hear the feedback that there was a number of parents who did not receive the survey. I want to go over a little bit what our process was and what we've uncovered. As we saw in the stakeholder survey earlier with Dr. Casey, parents and families respond more to their immediate vicinity than they do to an organization at whole. And so for this survey, we relied on the connections that our teachers have with their parents and communicate the way that their parents prefer to be communicated with. We did hear that there was a number of people that didn't receive the survey. We did do a systems audit of our communication platform, and we did uncover that one of the pilot teachers did not include the survey link in their communication. That was not something that was done intentional. That was an error on that individual teacher's part. I'm obviously not going to say who that is, but that was something that we followed up and would like to apologize for and thank for everyone that brought forward the information that they didn't receive that survey. I'd like to talk a little bit about the survey feedback we did receive. We got 49 responses. That's out of the 535 pilot students, taking into consideration the 150 pilot students that didn't receive that survey. That is something to take into consideration. But within the respondents here, we have 24 positive results. I coded each of the responses. 14 of them were neutral. 10 were negative. Within the negative responses, again, for transparency, I looked for duplicates across the survey. There was one individual that responded 3 times, and all 3 comments were negative, so those 10 negative includes 3 duplicates. We also had our curriculum out in our front office for 2 weeks for individuals to come and use the materials, look at the materials, and we had a QR code for a survey. For that, it received 1 response. Here, again, with that limited sample size, we would definitely be very open to continuing to gather parent feedback throughout whatever process the board decides to move forward with. There's a lot of mixed reactions among that parent feedback and some challenges in understanding and adapting to the changes, which we definitely want to hear and understand is something for us to take into consideration as we implement. We asked the parents, what do you think most engages your child in learning math? And the 3 major themes are a desire for challenge and critical thinking. There was mixed feelings about group work. So again, that is a common theme amongst parents and students, that there's a lot of different opinions about that. And then the need for clarity and concrete learning opportunities. And again, we've heard that and recognize the need for that balance with that explicit instruction piece. Any other feedback that they have, concerns? There's definitely some concerns and criticisms regarding the new curriculum, a need for clarity in those concrete learning opportunities, and then the individual parents that did respond to the survey had a lot of mixed feelings about whether the curriculum or their students' math experience was positive or negative for them this year. I'll turn it back to Dr. Edwards to talk about, based on the data set that we've received, some of the implementation considerations that we're taking into account as we implement whatever curriculum we do in the future. Regardless of the decision, these are some of the things that we want to take into consideration.
And before I dive into this, I want to just speak again of a note of appreciation for our pilot teachers and the task that they have taken on behalf of their colleagues. And furthermore, the team of middle school teachers that have come together to realize that they want to teach math differently. And I think that is an important thing to point out here as we reflect upon this experience and what was the takeaway, recognizing that there were, and there will continue to be challenges around that anytime change is brought forward. There are growing pains with that. And we certainly had and will continue to have at the elementary level those growing pains. And likewise, if we were to make any change at the secondary level, specifically at the middle school level, here in this particular case, we will experience that as well. As I spoke about, wanted to make clear the air, if you will, around the K-5 implementation of Bridges. Likewise, I'd like to speak just a little bit before I dive into this around what does this mean at the high school level. At this point in time, we are not prepared we want to engage again with our high school teachers as they too are looking at the results of feedback that they've received from their students, as well as our performance results, and analyze what would be our best course of action there. So no decisions have been made. We're looking at different curriculums, considering the potential for some pilot curriculums next year. And but at this point in time, that is something that I wanted to make sure is clear here tonight. Next steps, based upon that pilot feedback, a significant amount of conversation has been had around the notion of group work. And you've heard about it as a board at recent sessions and open forum comment, heard about it again tonight. And we certainly heard about it from the Teaching and Learning Advisory at the subsequent meetings that we had in March and April. And at each of those meetings, we definitely had conversation from our teachers talking about how they too, pilot teachers specifically, they too have grown in their understanding of when, and they will continue to, as always, as a teacher does, grow in their understanding of this lesson is going well or this lesson is not going particularly well, and we need to pivot. We need to make adjustments. That is the art of teaching, and that is something that I have a high degree of confidence in our professionals to do, and always have done and will continue to do. And specific to the group work, I have firm belief that they will make adjustments as appropriate to their given class. And that might look different from first period to third period because of the needs of the individual students in that class. And we've heard time and time again from our pilot teachers that they have done that. And this shift of teaching approach that has come about has allowed them to get to know their individual students at a deeper level and what their students might need. We also are committed and would be committed to continuing to do our reviews and establish a quarterly implementation review with teachers and parents and students to make sure that we are have our real-time impact known of how our students are doing, how our parents are adjusting, because there is an adjustment. One of the things that has come out in a variety of conversations is understanding as parents how to support their student at home. We've been with our curriculum, our existing curriculum, since the beginning of the 2011-12 school year. And in the first few years of implementation of that curriculum, our current curriculum, certainly how to support students with a new curriculum, how parents could support students, was a learning curve process. And our teachers have developed over time a number of strategies to assist with that. I'm confident that once again, that process will be something that they will be engaged in should we move forward and receive approval. And we also have not only our initial training that would be certainly desired as any time when you implement something new to start a school year, that you do training in the summer leading up to that so that you can hit the ground running to the extent possible, but that there be ongoing training throughout the upcoming school year and multiple school years. And that is one of the components of the relationship that we have established and would establish with CPM. And then also, as we continue to look at how best to meet the individual needs of our students, analyzing what that means. And I referenced this earlier in my comments about the support that our K-5 teachers have received, specifically from each other in grade level meetings, as well as from the peer coaches. We at the elementary level created a common goal that was accepted from a QComp perspective. So all of our K-5 learning teams were working specifically on their improvement, teaching improvement plans and personal and team goals related to the implementation of curriculum. We've begun to look at how we could do the same at the middle school level as well. So we definitely, the support from those various professionals to come and support the teachers in helping them understand best how to continue to meet the needs of their individual students is something that we're going to pay particularly close attention to as we would move forward. So at this time, we'll open for questions.
Thank you very much. Did you want to add anything, Dr. Thomas?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the board for questions. Director Olstad?
Yeah, sorry. Checking to make sure this is on. Thank you. I've a couple, maybe a few questions, more comments. I've, talked through a study session, one study session, 2 teaching and learning committee meetings, and more on this particular subject. But the one thing that I have a very unique privilege is that I have a daughter in one of the pilots. She's in 7th grade. In full transparency, she knew I was talking about her tonight, and she was okay. And I will say that we learned from the very first day of school, before the first day of school, that she was going to be in a pilot. And I can say she has really embraced the productive struggle that is talked about in this curriculum. Math is not something that is a favorite of hers. And if she was sitting right in here next to me, she would say that. It's not a favorite. I have seen this productive struggle. My husband and I both have. And we really appreciate, what we really like about this too is the group work. Actually, we're fans of the group work because I think it's a life skill. And I think it happens in other classes too, other subjects that I think, why not math? And I think it makes a lot of sense. She's really grown in her comprehension of math. This is kind of a year where she's not struggling at home, and I can appreciate that as a mom. But that wasn't good enough. I went back to the math vision that we have. I have seen her persist through challenges where it's just like, oh, this is, I don't get this. And I've seen her persist through it. I've seen the coaching and help that her teacher has given her in building that confidence to, again, feel safe taking those risks, which is part of our math vision as well. Her confidence has just soared. Again, in an area that's not necessarily her strong suit. She asks a lot of questions, and I think that is important. The spiral concept that we've talked about, the questions from 3 lessons ago coming back on a test, I think that's important to deepen that comprehension. But again, even having a student in a pilot, that still wasn't good enough. So I went to observe, and I did not purposely sit in on her class. I've popped my head in a few times, but I did not observe her class because I felt it was a conflict and it would probably be really awkward for both of us. And so I went to observe, and what I really liked about it was that it was teacher-led and group work, various different times throughout the same hour. And so this particular hour, it was a lot of that. And what I also really liked is the teacher, anytime a student would say something or have an answer, she'd say, prove it. And they'd have to go back and prove it. And one particular thing that I noticed when they were up at the whiteboards, the VMPs or whatever the heck they're called, the whiteboards, one group did it very differently than the group next to them. They were very visual. They would kind of draw out their answer, whereas the group right next to them was very algebraic, very formulaic in their answer. They both got the same answer, both got the right answer, but I thought that was really neat to see the fact that they did it very different ways. And I think that's something that this curriculum helps foster in these kids. I know that one of the biggest complaints, and again, as a parent of a pilot student myself, one of the bigger issues is how can I help my kid at home if I don't even understand it? And I get that, and I think that's completely valid. My husband and I were no different in that way. And I think that is a hole or an area of opportunity that we can work on, that I think the teachers would likely, I don't want to put words in their mouth, I think would likely know that that's a piece of feedback that they're getting. I think no curriculum is perfect. no curriculum is perfect. I think the tweaks that, there are areas of opportunity in here, and they're in this document here, that I think speaks to the willingness to pivot, the students' willingness to pivot, and the fact that, these teachers they're not told to pilot something, they volunteer to do it. So I think that's important to point out too, is the amount of work that they're putting into this doesn't go unnoticed. And then finally, I just want to speak to the student feedback. I think it's completely valid. I've had conversations with students. Having a daughter in the pilot means her friends are also in some of the pilots, and so I've been able to talk to them as well. And a lot of it matches kind of what we're hearing tonight, both positive and negative. No real surprises with the conversations I've been having. But I think I sit here at this table as a board member, not a curriculum expert. And so I look to my kids' teachers to be those experts. And I think it goes to true partnership with your child's teachers and what that looks like. And having a question and emailing it in and having a conversation, maybe a really tough conversation. And I think that's valid, and I think that's okay, and it should be happening. But I want the students to know that, I hear you. I've had conversations with them, but I have the unique privilege of having CPM in my home every night and really seeing my student shine. And I just kind of wanted to put that out there because I am in a unique position to have that in my home. And so I thought I would share that. My one question, Dan, did you say, when did we last see a change in middle school math? 2011?
We began in 2011-12. It was a multi-year phase-in, began with sixth grade and moved forward.
Okay. So I guess do we want to wait another 10 years? See, I can't do math either. 13 years. Do we want to wait another 13 years to do something? And we heard, let's do something, let's do something, let's do something. Let's do something.
I don't have a lot of questions. I've had most of my questions answered. I appreciate a lot of your experience and anecdotal and all the things we've heard tonight for sure. One thing that's kind of always been resonating in these conversations, because I have as well been to some curriculum committee meetings on this, is there's no data, there's no data, there's no data. And I'm like, how can there be no data? And so tonight, I really appreciate the link you guys provided in here about the research-based introduction. So the whole curriculum is based on data and research, and that's how curriculum is built. So I appreciate that, and it is very informative and gives us a lot of data about best practice and ways that kids learn and the spiral effect. The other thing I want to address is we had a speaker talk about inefficiencies, that there's a feeling that this curriculum might be inefficient, and I think that's a fair criticism, but I actually don't view it as a criticism. I think what is really inefficient is to not build foundational skills so that when we're 10th, 11th, 12th graders taking the ACT or putting math to practice, that we've forgotten a method that we should know thoroughly, that we learned in 7th or 8th grade, but it wasn't drilled down to the extent it needed to be. So I think the switch to making things a little inefficient, I don't really like that word. I don't think that's the right word, but I think that's a fair criticism. I just don't view it as a criticism. So I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I do have a question. On the mid-year grades slide, Dr. Zimbush referenced a difference in the retake policy. I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about that, from what is current to how.
Sure. And also I wanted to invite up, if any pilot teachers also want to come and tell me I'm saying something incorrect, please do so. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a retake policy difference, but it was an implementation consideration, because when you provide a retake option for a student, you basically have to prepare a parallel assessment that assesses the same exact content but using different numbers. And that is something that is a teacher-created parallel assessment that takes time for teachers to be able to create over time. So given our previous curriculum, that is something that they had on hand for non-pilot students, was that parallel assessment that they could take for a retake. Given that this was our pilot year and there was already so much that the teachers had to do, they did not have the time to then also create a parallel assessment in the pilot program. And so that it's not that there was a theoretical difference, it was that there wasn't the actual tool available, and that is one of those tools that gets developed over time as we implement any curriculum. So that's kind of a very good example of why it takes time for something to be fully implemented, because there sometimes has to be those teacher-created resources.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, didn't mess that up too bad.
That explained it very well. Thank you so much. Director Olsted, I appreciate you sharing your experiences. And Director Crosby, even the things that you share too. I too appreciate all of the things that have been brought forward from the students who have been having challenges, to the teachers who have shared, some of the experts in all of this. I appreciate all of the information given. I appreciate this additional evening and being given more time, given the feedback that we have received, and really wanting to have time to process through those. And but I just want to thank everyone for what was brought forward tonight. I think tonight was a lot of rich content, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Director Velasquez?
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. It answered a lot of the different questions I have. I know that over the past several years, we have seen a decline in our standardized testing scores and performance of that. We've heard from community loud and clear over and over that we as a body of board members, as well as the administration, need to do something to try and halt that decline and get back into those fundamentals, right? But even doing the fundamentals of reading, writing, math, those areas change. We have to be adaptable. We have to continue to create learners and learning opportunities so that they can develop and harness critical thinking components. And I believe that going through this process of selecting a new curriculum, of listening to our teaching and learning committee, listening to our pilot teachers, we have to trust that they know what they're talking about. And this will help us do that very thing, that something different, so that we can realize a change for the betterment of all of our learners, those that do extremely well in standardized tests, as well as those that, for a variety of different reasons, don't perform so well on standardized tests. But at the end, beyond the test, it's making sure we have students and learners who are college ready, who are career ready when they get to that next phase of life. So I see a lot of that reflected here in what came forward from just throughout the pilot. The question I have relates to the parent and guardian feedback. For those individuals that didn't receive the survey, was there an opportunity to correct that after the fact, or no?
We discovered that very recently, so no, not in time for tonight's conversation.
Okay. Will they have an opportunity to provide feedback?
So one of the things that we've been discussing since that is what that might look like. And
Okay.
back to the previous slide here, with regard to what this is all about is considerations, as Dr. Zumbush pointed out. as we consider moving forward, what information do we need to have in order to have a successful implementation? And that would be the lens under which I would ask us that we would consider conducting a final end of the year for all pilot student, parents of pilot students, an opportunity to give us additional end of the year feedback on their full experience.
Okay.
To help inform moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have several questions about the presentation, and then I have some feedback because I had the opportunity to visit the classrooms last week as well, so I have some feedback on that I'd like to share as well. The first question I have under the mid-year grades, it's the pilot versus non-pilot, 7th grade pre-algebra. My question is we had talked in our study session that you were going to try to pull last year data. Will you be providing that to the board before we make a final decision? For 7th grade specifically?
I pulled the grade data for maybe I misunderstood your request and I apologize. I pulled data from the 7th graders as they performed in their grades last year. And the students on average in the pilot had higher grades than the students in the non-pilot, which resonates because we know that they had higher starting FastBridge scores as well. So I apologize if I misunderstood the question. I pulled 6th grade scores from last year, 6th grade grades from last year of the current 7th grade pilot students that we presented here.
Yeah, I mean, we had a long discussion about this in the study session, and I think the biggest, first of all, I think this is a really hard apples to apples comparison, and I think that was talked about in the Teaching and Learning Committee, because right now, the more I learned about the pilot and which classes are piloting it, it doesn't seem like an apples to apples comparison. So like the thing that I was trying to, in my mind, that I felt would give the best apples to apples is as you looked at, I don't even know what slide this is, I apologize. It says mid-year grades, pilot and non-pilot. Looking at data from your 7th graders last year, looking at your non-pilot, looking at that data, I felt like would give us the best comparison if we were able to pull what is your 7th grade pre-algebra non-pilot. So that's what I was looking for, and if you haven't pulled it, that's fine.
I just wanted to clarify that the cohort that is in current 7th grade is the cohort that we're looking at pilot versus non-pilot. So I wouldn't have, we're not sharing the 8th grade or the 5th and 6th because that's identifiable at the teacher level. So if I was pulling the students who are pilot and non-pilot from last year from 7th grade, that would be a cohort that we're not displaying. So that's why I pulled the 6th grade, because that is the only comparison we have of pilot and non-pilot, is the current 7th grade cohort.
But there's no data on here from last year for 6th grade. Am I missing something?
I'm verbally telling, yeah, I pulled it today.
Oh, okay, so you'll be sharing with with the board.
The 6th grade, yeah, so the pilot versus non-pilot, I do have their 6th grade data from last year. Those who are currently in the pilot in 7th grade had a higher average grade in 6th grade than the non-pilot students.
Yeah, if you could just share it with us, that would be great. I think that's the best way to understand it. And then under the 6th grade longitudinal data, your FastBridge data, is this, when you're referring to 6th grade, are you referring to, because we didn't have a 6th grade pilot. We had a 5th grade do the pilot. So the SAGE 5th grade class did the pilot. There was no 6th grade pilot class. So can you help me understand why this data is represented in here?
There was a request to show longitudinal data trends in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. These are all students in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade over the last few years. The conversation, to my recollection, was to understand whether the pattern that we're seeing so far this year in our FastBridge scores is similar to patterns that we've seen in the past. So this does not include pilot versus non-pilot. This is our aggregate district data in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade over the last 3 years.
Yes, thank you. And I think it's important to note there was no 6th grade pilot class, though, included in this data, because the pilot was in 5th grade.
Just 7th grade, but again, these are aggregate scores for all students.
Okay, thank you. And then I want to ask a few questions. I know you've gave some explanations about the surveys, And I think, Director Velazquez, thank you for the question about will we be redoing the survey? As far as parent feedback, it wasn't even like which ones weren't received, but I think what I've heard from the community is that there was a survey done. And the reason this sticks out to me and to the parent that brought it to my attention is the questions that were asked are not the same as what's represented on this parent feedback. And one of the questions was, has your student talked about a lesson we did in class? Hot dogs, giant pencils, cookie fairness, penny tower, and bubbles was one of the questions. And those survey results were not included in this parent feedback. And so that was a survey that was conducted. The parent did fill it out and provide feedback. And where are those survey results?
There is occasionally individual teachers who solicit feedback for their own purposes. So if that particular survey question was an individual teacher reaching out to her parents soliciting that feedback, that was not part of the official survey. The reason we don't display it is because every teacher asks slightly different questions, and it's for their own personal improvement process and not for the official pilot program. And that is something as well that we don't aggregate across because each teacher is asking slightly different questions. So that's really for their own purposes, for their instructional improvement.
So I appreciate that. I think some of the questions that they did ask, like, does your student seem excited about math class this year? I think some of those questions specific to, this was a CPM pilot teacher, would be valuable in the board understanding the aggregate of those survey responses playing into the total survey responses. Because I know each individual teacher did send out surveys, multiple surveys, and so by saying there's only 29 of the 49 respondents, I believe that from what I've heard feedback, there are more surveys out there with feedback from parents, and I think it would be interesting for the board to be able to have access to that information or have a presentation on that information so that we have a full understanding of the parent feedback.
I'll defer to Dr. Thomas on this, but I personally would not include data that is collected from an individual teacher for their own instructional improvement purposes for this purpose.
I would echo that, and the questions, one of the questions that you just referenced does align to, one of our overarching kind of statistical question that we're asking about what their favorite things are about math. But again, as teachers ask questions of their students, and I'll say those are formative assessments, that's for their practice knowledge, that's for their implementation knowledge. And again, to have consistency of the exact same question being asked, even one word could slightly nuance how a question may be interpreted, et cetera. So aggregating across when you don't have consistent questions asked won't be reliable. So again, I think what we shared with you today is the ones that we have asked that are consistent across all teachers, minus the one that we acknowledge that got omitted from a classroom submission, and we'll be capturing an end-of-year cycle as well to make sure that we can include that cohort. So I would concur from a reliability standpoint.
Thank you, and I would say if there's any particular questions that seem particularly insightful, I think we can take those into consideration as we do our end-of-year feedback survey, and we can always, make our questions better. And if there's I've been working closely with the individual teachers. If there's a particular item that they found to be particularly fruitful in terms of the feedback, we'd love to collaborate on that. So that's something that we can definitely take into consideration for the final feedback survey.
Yeah, I think the criticism is that the parents are not feeling like their voices were heard. And so knowing that they did fill out surveys and their information is not represented, feeling like they're heard, knowing that they're heard, and that their information is included in this important decision that we make in the board is really important. So if there was time before we make a board decision in order to do another survey, I think it would be beneficial to our board to be able to make a decision. I want to go back to something that Director Crosby stated. As far as data, when we were adopting Bridges, I went back and I watched that meeting, and there was so much excitement with the kids up here demonstrating how they were doing Bridges. There was excitement on the curriculum committee. As a member of that, the full curriculum committee was on board. We were asked, do we support the curriculum? We were all very excited. We had full teacher buy-in. We had full community buy-in. We had full parent buy-in. And one of the things that you stated in that meeting, Director Crosby, was, where's the data? We can't make a decision as a board without the science and the data to support, because data is important. The data that we were given is a link to the CPM's website, and as the provider of, it's like selling a new car. I'm going to give you information about the new car. That is not the science behind this curriculum. There is a lack of data that supports. We did receive, I went back and looked at my notes, we did receive a link to masscenter.org when we were reviewing Ridges, and it had tons and tons of science backing that curriculum. And for this, one of the criticisms for this curriculum is that there really is no data to support this style of learning. I'd like to just add some of my comments about my visit last week. And I would say last week I had the pleasure of spending time with Principal Kuchabek at both of our middle school campuses. I attended both regular math classes and CPM classes. Outside of my observations on the curriculum, I have to say I was incredibly impressed with the talent of our teaching staff and how respectful and engaged our students were in the classroom. Thank you for opening your arms and allowing me to visit your classrooms. One thing that was clear to me is that outside of the content, the method of building thinking classrooms, which is CPM, is a small group of instruction, is already being used in our district in multiple classrooms. And as stated in our math vision created in 21-22. So I think the question, Director Olsted, when you asked, have we had the same curriculum in place since 2011? That is accurate, but I do believe, I've heard that the curriculum was tweaked in 21-22, correct me if I'm wrong, by many teachers in our district to implement this building thinking classrooms concept. And I saw it in play in different classrooms where there were small group breakouts. There was direct teacher instructions, but then the kids broke out into small groups and were up at those vertical whiteboards. It's called vertical whiteboards, but there is a term for it. Yeah. So is that correct or not?
So what you are describing is instructional practices, and yes, instructional practices, there was a focus on shifting instructional practices, and those instructional practices aligned. We do not have the curriculum to support those instructional practices, and this would be a curriculum that would support those instructional practices.
Correct. Oh, thank you. And then one of the criticisms also is that the math standards do not dictate how we teach math. It dictates the content. So one of the things that I'd like to see before we make this board decision is a graph that shows what is the math standards, the content, the standards that have changed from the last standards to the new standards. The biggest difference that I noticed between a CPM classroom versus a regular classroom is the time that the instructor spent on direct instruction. Our traditional classrooms versus CPM, the instructor launches the classroom with a brief discussion of a topic that is relevant to something happening in our community. The question that was asked in the classroom that I attended was, how was your early release day? Honestly, the kid's response was pretty funny, but in this case, it's a question that was directed about how students spent their early release day. Then the CPM instructor then gives a brief description on how to solve a problem. And kids are then assigned to small groups to solve questions that are written on those whiteboards. The students are then asked to use their thinking skills to solve the problem. The teachers bounce from student group to student group, answering questions to each individual group question. And some of the observations and the challenges that I see that we face with a district with larger class sizes is that I noticed that some groups were highly engaged in the process. I noticed that some students were not in groups at all and were working on their own. There were individual students working at tables that were not in groups. I noticed some kids say, hey, thanks for the answer. I didn't understand that. So the one student was solving it, and the other kid said, hey, thanks for the answer. I learned that there are no parent resources to assist students at home. I also learned that students' assignments are graded on completion versus on accuracy. So it's leading to, if a student got a problem wrong on their homework, then there's no one calling them out on the correction, and there's no way for that student to know to make the correction on the test. What I noticed in our regular classroom was much the same. This helped me to understand and take a deeper dive into several of the concerns that we have heard from both students and parents and community members. Some of the biggest concerns that I have learned and I have heard are the following, and there's quite a few, but I'll try to keep this brief. There is no science or data to support building thinking classrooms, that it's an effective method of teaching. Building Thinking Classrooms, which is CPM, is criticized as hashtag sinking classrooms and the math movement taking over our schools. It is criticized as being a fad practice similar to what happened in reading with the failure of Lucy Calkins' new style of reading curriculum. Building Thinking's classrooms has been criticized as being a progressive teaching method and a quick fix to dropping proficiency scores. Building Thinking Classrooms is a popular and largely discredited teaching strategy, especially for minimally guided classroom instruction. And I think when it's properly implemented the way it's supposed to be implemented, the teacher it really is minimally guided classroom instruction. I thought this was really interesting. This was a quote from a news article that I read. Is building thinking sinking classrooms? The quote was, one razor-sharp New York City parent, Virginia Delwart, claimed that many students were struggling to master math in the program, and it was dividing her family and her community. To many honor students were bombing assessments, and weak students with learning challenges were completely lost. The alternative to CPM, or Building Thinking Classrooms, is direct instruction. And direct instruction has science to back it, and it's closely related to the science of reading, which was just addressed in legislation through the READ Act. Direct instruction is backed by evidence. Direct instruction is used in colleges and other advanced math programs. Direct instruction teaches content. Some direct challenges I foresee with implementing CPM in our district are as follows. How do we support meeting the needs of all learners as it pertains to the highest levels of achievers and those who find math challenging? With the rise of SPED students in our district, how do we meet the needs of our students on the spectrum who thrive with structure and direct instruction? How do we support students coming out of SAGE, Ola Delago, and our English learners? How do we engage with parents and provide resources so that they can partner with parents to support their parents at home? How do we train subs on a curriculum that's so difficult for our staff to understand and requires a lot of supplementing?
Excuse me, Director
I'm
Atkinson.
almost done,
You've-
and I do
you've
have
got
10
quite
minutes,
a
thank
bit
you.
of-
No, I
you've-
have 10 minutes, thank you. This
gone
is really
over that.
important. This is important feedback, and I'm almost finished. Thank you very much.
You're reading from a book.
It is not a book, it's everything that I've heard from our community. How do we support teachers with professional development demands when also implementing training in the READ Act? How do we support teachers with supplemental material when it was stated that this curriculum will require supplemental material to be effective? How does this new curriculum align with the new math standards as standards are specific to content? And then we have still not heard the answer to what are the total costs and the recurring costs of CPM. I think it's fair to recognize that COVID learning loss is real and still has an impact on our students and teachers. You heard them tonight. They're eager for a solution to navigate this challenge. Since so many factors have changed since 21-22, wouldn't it make sense for our district to re-look at the math vision for our district once we've completed our strategic plan to ensure that the vision aligns with our new strategic plan and what's important to our community? We report to our community. In the community feedback sessions, our community came together, and it was clear that elevating academic achievement with a focus on rigor and proficiency was something that came up as a priority in every session and was something that our community could agree on as a priority. I don't believe that this curriculum, CPM, also referred to as Building Thinking Classrooms, fits what our community what we're hearing from our community. I am almost finished. Thank you very much. I have
Said
concerns.
you're almost finished before.
I have concerns with the timing of the approval of this curriculum and spending resources to support this curriculum before we finalize the strategic plan, as consequently, it may not align with the priorities of our community. I would like to make a motion this evening to move the vote on CPM planned for May 13th to after board approval in June of this new strategic plan.
Are you making a motion?
I made a motion, yes.
Okay. Do you have a second? Or? Okay, with no second. First of all, does any one of the teachers want to speak to the ones that Director Zumbush mentioned, to any of the concerns that have been stated so far before I ask my questions? Okay. Oh, you do, you,
I just want to clarify that CPM is not building thinking classrooms. Some of the ideas from building thinking classrooms. So to use those two synonymously is, I just want to point that out.
Yeah, for my research, it says it is, so thank you for that.
Well, as an educator, 26 years, who's done a lot of research, it's not nice.
I received this information from an educator, and this curriculum is being, it was being trialed in other schools in our district, and I've received a lot of information from that educator as well.
Director Atkinson, it's been 20 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think it's time to hear some other board members.
First of all, I appreciate the data. There's a lot of data here, and as a parent who has had kids go through programs, also, I'm not brave enough to teach middle school math or elementary school math. I want to add that, but I have taught at the university level math, engineering, and computer science, and I can tell you that the spiral method is the only way we teach it. It's about failing forward. And it's been quite a joy to be involved in that. First of all, I want to thank Director Bullion for your test retake question, because I did have that question too. The concept of critical thinking is basically learning how to learn, and that's what I interpreted. I did sit in a couple of classrooms at the beginning of this year, and I was very impressed. I know that the group method has been around in multiple classrooms, and I saw it in English, I saw it in history, I saw it in other math courses, not just the pilot courses. So I know that it has a place. It's been very, very well received. And my concern also is basically when you focus on the group, that I'm hoping, and I saw firsthand, that the teacher will adjust, because not all classrooms are going to adjust to that. Not all students are going to adjust to that. But if you look at most of your middle school and even high school math programs, your Math Olympiad, your math teams, et cetera, they all work in groups. And they work in groups because they compare answers, because they learn from each other. And quite frankly, if anyone's had a kid who had stuck with math and their parents couldn't help them, they call up a friend and say, hey, what'd you get? You know, so that works. But I'm most excited about the critical thinking and about learning how to learn and about learning how it all fits together. The other thing that, like I mentioned before, is I've always been a fan of the spiral versus the mastery method. And as someone also has tutored kids in this district, and I tutor mostly advanced algebra or calculus, the thing that's always struck me, and granted, the number of kids I tutor is not a significant population sample by any stretch of the imagination for the number of students who have math here. But when they're going on to the upper level maths, what's really concerned me is what the issue of why they think they're not good at math, or why they think that the math is hard, is because a lot of them never really mastered the basic algebra behind the calculus. They did well, and then, you know, they did well enough to get through that level, and they moved on to the next level without that foundational regurgitation, almost like a regression test constantly happening. And so finally they get to a level where, I've said this before here, they hit a wall. And I see that also when they're taking the ACT, I see that when they're taking their MCAs, because the MCA isn't testing just what they learned that grade or that last test. They're testing everything up until that point. And also, as someone who did not basically contribute, but I sat in on the new MCA Math and Science, because I was on a committee and a board and stuff like that with the Minnesota Academy of Science that allowed us to do that. That was a concern of the instructors that were contributing to the new math standards. So I get it. And but I also get the trepidation from parents who all of a sudden don't know how to teach their kids at home anymore. They don't know how to help them because this is new for them too. And I get the students that have this new way of group. And so my question really is to the peer coaches, and as we move forward, and I am in favor of it. I think it's done fairly well, and I think the FastBridge data, the mid-year FastBridge data, really speaks volumes. By the way, is how and how much are we going? I mean, you have a curriculum. Are the peer coaches going to be trained, and will they be able to be trained to help these teachers adapt and adjust and pick the parts of the curriculum that fit their classrooms at their point in time best, so they know how to adapt? And that was my primary question.
Thank you for that question. Yes, we have done so with our bridges, and we will do so here, that we will include our peer coach. We have specifically one peer coach who works with the middle school math teams, and she will be included in the training and be working side by side with them throughout not only the initial training, but the ongoing training as well.
Thank you. And as a side note, like I said, I'm not a middle school math teacher by any stretch, and I'm not a teacher by trade by any stretch either. And I just want to add that if this is hard, it's hard to try and convince people who aren't in your career profession to all of a sudden jump into what you're doing and make approval of it. And quite frankly, and with respect to the teachers, if somebody came into my job and tried to tell me how to do my job, and they'd never done my job, they were not certified in my job, I'd be pretty angry. And I really like the idea that we're looking to the professionals, the people who are experts in what they're doing. And they basically have to eat their own dog food at the end of the day. And I respect that, and I appreciate that, and I am really impressed and overwhelmingly impressed that nearly all the pilot teachers that are in this are 100% in favor of this. So I'm good, and I do appreciate the data. Okay, next on our agenda is the preliminary 24-25 budget report.
Thank you, Chair Franz, Dr. Thomas, members of the board. I was hoping we'd be able to show this presentation, but we're going to have a computer restart in 1 minute, so I think I'll just go through it on the slides that you have in the packet.
Yeah, you're probably best to do that.
Yep, I think we're going to run out of time. So we have had several conversations over the past few months about the budget for 24-25. This is going to be nothing new that you haven't seen before. I'm just kind of putting this in a package because on June 10th at the board meeting, we're going to ask you to approve the 24-25 budget. As you know, by statute, we have to have an approved budget done by June 30th. So I'm going to run through this again. There shouldn't be anything that you haven't seen before, but we'll just kind of update it. If there is anything in the next 3 weeks that come up, we'll let you know. But right now, this is kind of the way that it's going to stand on June 10th. The first slide has the enrollment assumptions. Again, you've seen these before. We're having slightly declined enrollment based on birth rates in the county. I've given you the estimates of what we have for the 24-25 enrollment numbers. Again, you've seen these before. Again, I just want to remind you that next year our highest class of seniors will be graduating next year, and we aren't going to see that number of seniors in the high school for quite a while. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. On the next slide, just a reminder that revenue is set in statute. It's Minnesota Statute 126C.10. The formula allowance for next year is $7,281 per adjusted pupil unit. The formula allowance is going to be 3% increase next year. The new statute has an inflationary factor built in, but it is capped at 3%. We have a decrease in enrollment due to our decline, or a decrease in revenue due to our declining enrollment. We're planning on additional mandates like the READ Act, some summer employment, earned safe and sick time, increased family medical leave. Those are all expenses that we're going to have to be planning for moving forward. And right now, our expenses are going to exceed our revenue by approximately $1 million. So we'll be asking you in the budget proposal to allow us to use fund balance to cover that $1 million. At the end of June 30th of 2025, we still anticipate our unassigned fund balance to be within the board policy of 8 to 12%. On the next slide, I'm showing some of the assumptions that we've made as we built the budget. For revenue, our projected state aid, levy, and other entitlements, miscellaneous, including investments, earnings, rebates, and activity fees, are all included in the revenue budget. Formula allowance increase of 2% for next year, and then going forward, it will be capped at 3%. The student enrollment, we're assuming, is going to increase over the summer by approximately 200 students, and historically that has happened, but we will keep an eye on that. If we don't see that kind of increase, then we will have a budget amendment in September, October, as we see the kids that do show up. Our expense budget includes reductions of $3.2 million, which we've talked about at several of the study sessions. We have increased special education needs due to increased student numbers. We're planning for inflation for our vendor contracts and supplies, and we're also assuming that the collective bargaining agreements will show increases in all of them, including healthcare. So as we look at kindergarten placements, and this is where we are seeing lower numbers than what we were hoping, but if you compare it to this time last year, they're not unreasonable. And again, that just means that we can assume that we're going to get some additional students coming in, especially at kindergarten, over the summer. And then I've also included, as of April 29th, how many open enrolled students we have by grade level. The next slide just shows the revenue projections, the state aid. So I think you've seen this before. I break out all of the different categories of state aid that we get. Majority of them are formula-based. A lot of them are based on enrollment numbers. So these are the estimated dollar amounts that we're going to see in state aid, about $94.9 million. And then the levy, which has already been approved, that was approved last December. So our levy is going to be about $19.8 million. We're going to anticipate other funds, including grants, some of the federal dollars, earnings investments, all of those other things of about $5.7 million. So we're seeing projected revenue of $120.6 million. And the next slide, you've seen this before. We've shown this several times. We're anticipating our expenses to be about $121.6 million. That's after the $3.2 million reductions that we've taken. So we will be asking for that $968,470 that we anticipate our expenses exceeding the revenue to be allowed to use fund balance for that. But we will be within the board parameters. And then the last slide, as we consider items that we would take or use fund balance to cover, there would be things like any new curriculum, some of the professional development for the READ Act, should we not get reimbursed or get reimbursed fully for the professional development we're going to be required. and use for capital projects. Our capital projects, the amount we get is based on enrollment, and then there's a formula that's very complicated around building age, and you can use capital project money for 3 different things. You can use it for curriculum, leases, and then capital projects, like for facilities. And as we've seen increased lease amounts for our Chromebooks and iPads, we're having to make some adjustments in how we spend the capital projects dollars. So in order to keep our capital projects in the operations department with some dollars plus the IT leases, it's going to put some strain on the curriculum budget. So that's why part of the fund balance, we're asking to use some of our ask from fund balance will probably be covering some of that curriculum, and it would be a one-time expense. So again, it's not going to change too much. I don't really anticipate anything unless we see some drastic changes in enrollment or some new dollars coming in from the legislature that's going to be finalizing their work the week after next. So if we're going to see any dollars in there, then we'll come back on June 10th with whatever changes that is. So I just wanted to give you that update. And then if there's questions, we can answer whatever I can tonight, or on June 10th, we will also be able to answer any of those questions.
I'm open up to the board for any questions on the budget. These are numbers we've seen before.
I just had one question, more clarifying maybe, and this is for maybe Dr. Edwards too. The new curriculum, are we talking about math or something else? The math we just discussed, and then I understand too, if you can speak to, that's a quote for like 7 years. So like this is like a very multi-year, if we're talking about.
That is correct. Our budget for the department that I oversee has been established, and that would include purchase in math. That was a part of a multi-year plan, and shifting that to this one-time expense in it. The quote would be for 7 years.
I had a question about the 200, the expected increase in enrollment of 200 kids over the summer. Maybe you said this, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but what's that number based off of, historicals or just, okay.
Historically, I mean, we have a trend line, what we are anticipating for the future enrollment. You kind of do a grade progression to see, you know, your first graders will be second graders. And that number that's always kind of historically, you have to figure out how to best estimate the kindergartners. So we are seeing about 200 fewer kindergartners than what we currently have. But again, we get a lot of enrollments in the summer. Just families are waiting till the last minute. They're getting their moves situated. They're figuring out where they're going to be attending. So we'll typically see additional kindergartners coming in the summer. And we do have our plans for next year, the allocations that we're giving, we have room to put some of those kindergartners in.
Yeah, I have a question. I just want to clarify, when you say one-time expense with curriculum, if we're using this for the math, the CPM curriculum, there are reoccurring costs every year. My understanding is the workbooks need to be purchased every year. Is that correct?
There would be ongoing costs that would be part of instructional supplies, but the initial upfront adoption of a curriculum, which is very standard practice.
And is professional development included in that, or is that a reoccurring cost as well?
That is included in the quote that would be brought forward for action. Ongoing professional development is included.
And how, can you share with us what that cost would be, or will you share that with us at a future meeting?
It's a part of the quote. It's included in the quote. It's not itemized separately.
What's the total number, though? That's what I was looking for.
Approximately, I believe it was right around 370,000.
370,000. And then do you know what the cost is for the workbooks as we move forward year by year?
I don't have that at this time.
Okay. I just have a question. While the overall numbers, like you said, haven't changed, it seems like the format has changed, how we look at them. And when I look at the 24-25 revenue projection, I think that's super helpful to have it broken out. Is there any way you can add how that compares to last year for revenue? And then the way you break out revenue, super helpful to see that by category, but I'd also like to see that for expenses by category this year versus last year, so that we can really see sort of an apples-to-apples comparison.
That's actually on one of the slides, the third to the last, the fund balance estimates. We've shown that it's the
This year
revenue
versus
on
last year.
top and the expenses below that.
And it's not broken out by category, though. That's the thing.
Salaries, fringe, purchase services, supplies, capital expenses, and miscellaneous.
This year versus last year, but then where is the revenue this year versus last year? Am I missing something?
On the top. So the revenue, it has the state aid, the levy, the grants, and the other.
No, but this page, where's the comparison to last year? Like, this is a great page. It shows you everything that's broken out, but where's the last year?
Oh, this is something that I give every year, so I can go back and pull the report that I gave last year.
I think it'd be helpful to see that.
We do have the detail in the study session book, the really, really detailed breakout that I believe you went back 2 years on, and this one goes back 22 to 23. So before additional work is allocated to a staff member, I think we need to have board direction to the staff member and to the superintendent to add additional work, even, especially since it's already been given.
If it's given, if somebody can just direct me to it. I mean, I feel like every time we look at budget data, and I'll be honest with you, receiving this on the Friday right before, I mean, only having the weekend to look at this was a little concerning because budget is important, right? It takes time to like look through the numbers and compare to last year and do all those things. So when we get our next round of budget data, if you could please just be respectful of hitting our deadlines of when it goes into board books so that we have enough time to look at the data, I would appreciate that from a board director. The other thing, are you including all the revenue that is to be coming out of the legislature? We heard today that there's over $100 million, 90 million, correct me? Sorry, possibly 90 million coming out of the READ Act. Are you including the additional revenue that potentially is coming out of the legislation
Well,
into
as
this budget?
I mentioned, when I talked about the revenue assumptions, was that if there was any additional revenue coming out of the legislative session, that they're ending their session in
May
2
20th.
weeks, I believe, March 20th.
Yep.
So if there is anything that's coming out of there, we will adjust that for the June 10th meeting. But right now, this is what we know for sure.
Okay, thank you.
It's listed. First of all, Director Frederickson, I appreciate you putting this into a PowerPoint format, and I know that we have received tons of data that has been consistent in the study sessions and as well as in our packets, and I know it takes a long time to put this in a PowerPoint format for presentation, so thank you for that. I did have one question, and that was when we were talking about the fund balance and we were talking about taking that additional nearly $1 million out, do you have any idea how that's going to affect our incoming fund balance for the next fiscal year,
Or percentage-wise?
percentage-wise?
Yeah, it would be, if we take that $1 million out, the total fund balance will be about 13.8%. The unassigned will be about 10.8.
So it's still going to be
within
the same, that's the number that's in here?
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. I wasn't sure if it was already reflected or not. And then the other thing is you mentioned increase in healthcare costs. And I know that I've already seen it rise because I saw the March and April detail transactional numbers come through, and it was quite a bit, actually. And I don't know if that's a reflection because we did switch plans. Is that what that was, or is it really just what we're going to expect going forward?
As we switched to Blue Cross Blue Shield, we are going to see a 4% increase in our rates. We anticipate, based on our, and Director Herman, correct me if I'm wrong, based on our historical spend that we've had on there, on our health insurance, we're anticipating about a 4% increase moving forward, which is what Blue Cross Blue Shield has kind of indicated, but again, we're not going to know until this year's final.
That's the UMR indication on there, of the healthcare costs and the transactional detail. It was just abbreviated on there. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Chair Franz, members of the board, to clarify, this next year, we approved a 5% increase in our health insurance, and we're projecting 4% moving forward because of our last 12-year trend. We were a little over 3% on average, but we are seeing the market adjustments and trends even being self-funded, and all the extreme hard work the insurance committee has done and all of our members to keep our costs down. The claims data that we are showing is showing that will probably no longer be around the 3%, so it'll be closer to the 4s.
Okay, thank you. And I know that will significantly impact next year as well, so thank you very much for that clarification. I don't have any other questions. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on, the next thing is the proclamation, which I am going to read for Youth Appreciation Week. Oh, I'm sorry. Approval, I'm sorry, I totally missed one. Approval of interests of the purchase orders. Sorry about that. And I need a motion and a second for this one. By Director Olstad.
Second.
And second by Director Bullion. Okay, Director Frederickson?
Yes, thank you. As we move forward into getting closer into next year, we have a lot of our schools are putting in purchase orders for 24-25, and obviously we don't have an approved budget yet, so we're just asking for approval from the board that we can issue the 24-25 purchase orders for the buildings before they end up going out for the summer. So we don't have that lag time in trying to get everything done in September when they come back.
And this is the same thing that we did last year.
Yep, we have to do this every year.
Any questions?
I have one question. Would anything over $25,000 still come to the board for approval?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0. Okay, next, did I miss anything? Okay. Proclamation of Youth Appreciation Week. And I'm going to read this. And Proclamation Youth Appreciation Week. Whereas the vast majority of youth are concerned, knowledgeable, and contributing partners within the community, and whereas the accomplishments and achievements of these young citizens deserves the recognition and praise of the community, and whereas Optimus International has since 1954 developed and promoted a program entitled Youth Appreciation Week, and whereas the citizens of the Prior Lake Savage Area School District have indicated a desire to join the Optimus in expressing appreciation and approval of the contributions of youth, the District's 719 Board of Education does hereby proclaim the second week of May as Youth Appreciation Week in the district. By this action, let it be known that we have faith in the ability of today's youths as they assume responsible roles in the future of humankind. Now, therefore, I, Mary France, Chairperson of the Prior Lake Savage Area Schools Board of Education, hereby proclaim the second week of May 2024 as Youth Appreciation Week in the Prior Lake Savage Area School District.
Thank you. And Dr. Scott Peterson, you want to say a few words at all on behalf, or?
I can, yes. Is this?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll be having a luncheon on Wednesday, and I think some of you will be there. So we'll be honoring probably, about 60 or 80 students from the various schools in the Prior Lake Savage area. And we emphasize the good side of our youth. So that's what we're after, and we thank you very much for this proclamation tonight. We have with us tonight a couple of Junior Optimus members,
Nissa Franz and Gabby Thompson. Franz. I'm sorry about that. We've got 2 juniors, part of apparently the largest class coming through the school next year. So they are going to be starting their senior year next year, and they are definitely outstanding students. I'm very proud to recognize the work that they've done for our school and the community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your patience.
Yeah. Way to stick it in.
Yeah. Okay, next is the proclamation for School Communicators Week, and I'm going to ask Director Olsted to read that one.
Prior Lake Savage Area Schools recognizes May 6th through 10th, 2024 as School Communicators Appreciation Week. Our school communicator professionals serve the critical function of an information liaison between a school district and its community, representing the district in various community organizations. This week, we celebrate our thanks and gratitude for these vital staff members. Whereas National School Communicators Day is being celebrated on May 10th, 2024, whereas transparent and effective communication about Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, programs, services, plans, decisions, and priorities to students, families, staff, and community stakeholders are critically important. Whereas, school communicators work tirelessly to ensure meaningful parental and community involvement through communication to build support for schools and the children they serve. Whereas school communicators commit to practicing communications/public relations in an ethical and comprehensive way that meets the needs and desires of all internal and external publics. I'm sorry. Whereas school communicators serve as a strategic partner to school boards and to district and school leaders to develop communication plans that support their missions and goals. Whereas school communicators work to amplify the branding and key messages of a school district to new and existing audiences. Therefore, let it be resolved, the Board of Education hereby extends its appreciation to all Prior Lake Savage Area school communication professionals and strongly encourages all members of our community to join in this observance, recognizing the dedication and hard work of school communicators, and declares May 6th through 10th, 2024 to be School Communicators Appreciation Week in Prior Lake Savage Area schools.
Thank you for that proclamation, and I do also want to just express my appreciation for our communications department. You know, we have Christy, Liz, Julia, and Amy all playing a critical role to being the first face that you might see when you come into the District Services Center, to their responsiveness to community inquiry and data information, to promoting our brand and our awesomeness, if you will, on social media, and then also just the whole ideation. I sit with Christy almost daily as a shoulder partner to think through how we communicate and strategize our communication effectively to make sure it lands in the appropriate ways. So I can't thank that entire team enough for everything that they do on a daily basis, and a week is not enough to say thank you for all you do, but we really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next proclamation is the National Speech and Language Pathologist Week, and I'm going to ask Director Velasquez to read that one.
Prior Lake Savage Area Schools recognizes May 13th through 18th, 2024 as National Speech and Language Pathologist Appreciation Week. This week we celebrate our thanks and gratitude for these vital staff members, whereas each year during the month of May, the American Speech and Language Hearing Association, ASHA, promotes Better Speech and Hearing Month to raise awareness about communication disorders and hearing health, and May 18th, 2024 is National Speech Language Pathologist Day. Whereas during the month of May, speech-language pathologists throughout the nation make a special effort to inform, educate, and raise public awareness of speech, language, and hearing disorders. Whereas school-based speech-language pathologists and teachers of the deaf and hard of hearing dedicate their lives to helping children in need and providing support in schools across our district. Whereas these professionals are essential to each school's exceptional student education team and are invaluable support resources for schools and parents. Therefore, let it be resolved, the Board of Education hereby extends the appreciation to all Prior Lake Savage Area Schools speech and language pathologists and declares May 13th through 18th, 2024 to be Speech and Language Pathologist Appreciation Week in Prior Lake Savage Area Schools.
Thank you, Board of Education, for that proclamation. And I'll just share a few things here. We have 656 students in Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, E through 12, that receive special education services from either a speech language pathologist or a teacher for the deaf, hard of hearing, or perhaps even both. We collaborate with these staff and parents and speech pathologists and teachers of the deaf, hard of hearing, create inclusive learning environments where every student can participate and actively make progress for their own individualized goals. And I just want to express our deep appreciation for this group of staff who go above and beyond every single day to ensure we have inclusive environments for every student, irrespective of the needs that they possess. So thank you all for the work that you do.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next topic is policy. We have 13 policies to go over. We don't really need to potentially go over all of them, so I'm going to ask in the interest of time to please do not limit what you want to say to make a point, but let's try to expedite this a little bit. These policies have been already through 2 reviews at our policy committee and 1 full review at our recent study session. So I am going to hand this over to Director Herman, sorry. Let's, since we have a few changes that have occurred since, I think at least one major change since our study session, I think we have to go through these individually. So I'm going to hand that over to her, but let's try to expedite this and get our points across in case there's anything we need to discuss.
Thank you, Chair Franz. Members of the board, for policy 425, there are no changes. We do have it noted to ensure that we are meeting the statutory requirements, but as mentioned and discussed at the last meeting, this is a policy that quite a bit of districts do not have, and we're recommending striking it accordingly.
Any questions?
Yeah, I just have clarification on that. The statutory requirements that you stated, it does state that the board is required to have that advisory development committee, which I believe we discussed would be, how do you say, we would be, I can't think of the right word, sorry. We would be turning that over to different committees within our district, which would be the Teaching and Learning Committee, Special Education Advisory Committee. Is that correct?
That is correct, yep.
Okay, and just being on the Teaching and Learning Committee, I know that this isn't something that we've touched on in the past. I also checked with the Special Education Advisory Committee. It's not something that they've touched with on the past regarding professional development. So knowing that the heavy load of professional development that's going to be coming down the pipeline with the READ Act and potentially new math curriculum, can we just ensure that this is something, because it does say it must include non-teaching staff, parents, and administrators. Can we ensure that this will be touched upon in those committees?
Yes, moving forward, and tonight would be a prime example on the Teaching and Learning Advisory Committee that was preceded this meeting, that we did discuss components of staff development, and that'll be ongoing.
And just to clarify, and Director Edwards and Herman, correct me if I'm wrong, but the statutes that refer to this basically start off the entire thing that a school board must use revenue authorized in the section 4 and then listed after that. And because we are already having these committees, like the majority of other school districts, the MSBA does not recommend this policy, does not have this policy, I don't believe, and neither do most other school districts because it's already embedded in everything else.
The MSBA does have a model policy, but it is not one of the required policies.
Okay, that's what it was. Thank you very much. So any other questions? Okay, moving on to policy 504.
Under policy 504, there were changes based off of the conversation at the last board meeting to make changes to the items under the general statement of policy.
Any comments on the added changes in section C, I believe, number 4?
Thank you for the changes made.
I like the changes made, and it looks like they're going to be somewhat easy to enforce because they're broad enough yet specific enough for parents. Thank you for the hard work on this. Any other questions?
I just have a question on how this is going to be communicated. I mean, I know that falls under procedural, but I think communication is key when we're making any key policy changes.
I think we'll communicate this through our student handbooks, and also this is something that I can also issue a more direct statement as well on my coming back as just as a high level, so people understand this is a high stakes policy for us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions or concerns? All right, moving on to policy 602.
509.1
I'm
did
sorry,
not have any changes.
509.1 went ahead.
509.1 did not have any changes from last time.
And policy 602? Changes, I don't believe.
Policy 602 did not have any changes except for removing the reference to policy 425.
Okay. Are there any other changes to the rest of the policies in here? I don't, from our study session? I didn't see any, but I wasn't sure if anyone had any emails.
Under skipping forward then to policy 610, we did add the legal reference to the Minnesota State High School League as requested by the school board, to add that reference in terms of the disciplinary actions.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question on 610. In the policy, I'm trying to find exactly where it states it, but it basically says that a district employee can bring their chaperone, or I'm sorry, can bring their spouse, and I can't find the exact wording, sorry, it'll take me a second to find it. But my question is that would the spouse's expenses be covered? Like, it says the spouse or family members. Would the spouses and family members' expense be covered if they were traveling with the district employee, is my question.
If they serve as an official chaperone, like other chaperones, it would be covered. If they are not serving as an official chaperone, that would not be the case. But in most cases, I don't want to say all, but I would say in most, if not all cases, they are serving as an official chaperone. And if the expenses are covered for other chaperones, it would apply to them as well.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Any other questions on 610? Director Herman, were there any other changes on the rest of those that were covered in the study session?
No, it is my, I did a quick review. I don't believe I missed any. Those were the major changes based off the discussion at the last meeting.
Are there any further questions or comments from anyone? Okay, are we okay to vote on these as all of 13 at once?
Yes.
Okay. Did I take a motion already? Nope. No, okay, so I need a motion
So made.
by Director Bullion,
Second.
a second by Director Velazquez. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that
Aye.
passes 6-0. Okay, moving on to administrative reports.
Thank you, Chair Franz and Board Directors. Just a few things I'll highlight this evening. It's kind of one of my second topics down below, but just a quick strategic plan update. We've completed all of our community meetings, and tomorrow we have our core planning team meeting where we will draft the initial vision, mission, priorities, and belief statements that we'll be bringing to you as a preliminary conversation, and then getting your feedback, and then going back with the team to finalize things, to bring it back before you in June. It's been a really good process. I want to recognize our ASBO award. Our district has once again earned the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting Award from the Association of School Business Officials International. Our district has been an award recipient for the past 15 years, and so just a huge shout out to Tammy and the entire business office team for your dedication to working through some really tough challenges and being honored for the integrity you uphold throughout that process. Also, we have been heavily engaged in our standard response protocol and some changes there. As we prepare for the 24-25 school year, we'll be implementing a new standard response protocol plan that's developed by the I Love You Guys Foundation. This is something that we are in deep partnership with a lot of our local law enforcement, fire, emergency medical responders, et cetera, all using the same standard response protocol. So that cohesive approach to safety and security is absolutely critical. It provides a clear and consistent protocol for responding to a wide variety of emergencies, from fires, lockdowns, evacuations, weather, or any kind of medical situation that might arise in any of our campuses. And then training and communication for this. Many have been going through it, but there will be additional training forthcoming in the start of next school year. Let's see. Just around community engagement, we held our second annual Realtor meeting this past April 24th. That was in the morning, and that evening we did a town hall on school finance. All of that information from the town hall is posted on our website, and I really want to thank our realtors and brokers for coming out. It's our opportunity to inform them, but we also learned a lot from listening to them in terms of perspectives that's happening out in our community, so thank you to them. And then just want to recognize a group of our retirees coming up on May 16th from 3 until 5 o'clock at Prior Lake High School. We will have our annual retiree celebration. And tonight, we had a couple on our consent agenda, and those two were Dale Bolts from HRE, custodian for 10 years with us, so congratulations to Dale. And then also Lori Nowacki, JP. She's the lead admin assistant there. She was also recognized on the consent agenda tonight, so I just want to make sure I give those two a shout out. And then others that we want to give mention to, that we've shared throughout the year, or throughout the past couple of months, is Lori Davis Fridges, Catherine Edward, Trody Jory, if I said that correctly, sorry about that, Sasha Kuznetsov, Principal K, as we affectionately call him. Yes. Jana Olson, Jeff Panitsky, Julie Pyle, Gina Schumacher, Maria Sullivan, Catherine Winkleman, Deb Buke, Candace Jenkins, Mary Lezer, Lori Neiman Patterson, Linda Roach, and Christy Teshalis are the ones that we'll be recognizing at Prior Lake High School May 16th from 3 to 5. So feel free to stop through. You'll meet and greet with their families and friends and send them off into happy retirement. That is all that I have.
Go ahead, Minister.
Okay, so future events, oh, I'm sorry. Next on the list is, I just lost my place, is administrative reports.
Finish those.
Oh, sorry. Dan Bergen, we do not have here. By the way, since this is the last board meeting, and I seriously doubt he's going to come back after he graduates.
Why not? Meeting next
Another one.
week. We have another meeting next week.
For June 10th. Well,
Okay.
he-
Well-
Yeah, he might not, we'll
Yeah,
see.
that's afterwards. Maybe we can invite him for the second half of the study session next time. But anyways, would like to say congratulations to Dan. And hopefully we will see him one more time. And I'm going to ask for board reports.
I just have something very quick. Our Equity Advisory Committee has been kind of broken out into some little mini committees, if, as it were, for different areas of work. And one of them is to help plan the Coffee and Conversations. The upcoming one on May 28th, which is telling you for your calendars, the topic is homelessness, which I think is going to be very powerful. And so our little side committee is helping organize that with Sam, as well as future meeting on some future topics and future dates, so we can calendar out a little bit farther ahead. And so I just wanted to make sure May 28th was on your calendars.
Anything? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Director Velasquez?
Certainly. Yes, Southwest Metro, we just recently settled the teacher contract, and similar to Prior Lake Savage, are working through the budget process so that we can deliver a balanced budget and what all the implications are after finalizing the negotiations with the bargaining unit for teachers. In parallel to that, our superintendent for Southwest Metro, Darren Kerms, is retiring at the end of the school year after 18 years with Southwest Metro Intermediate District. He started when there were two different organizations. There was the Scott County Educational Cooperative, and then the Carver Educational Cooperative, and oversaw the merger of both of those into the Carver Scott Educational Cooperative, and then it morphed into just the state's fourth intermediate school district. We saw quite a bit of growth underneath his watch, underneath his tutelage. A lot of innovation has happened, and he will be sorely missed. So we are currently in the throes of working through the recruitment process to find the next superintendent for this amazing school district.
Awesome. But I worked a little while with Darren Kermes and really enjoyed him and loved the superintendents he brought in and everything that he did.
I have a board update, please. I attended the Teaching and Learning Committee this evening with Director Olsted. We had a discussion. The first discussion was centered around a change in how our district possibly, I want to say, represents credits. That doesn't change the calculation, but credits are now being calculated as 0.75 per quarter, the way I understood it, and we're looking at a potential change to 0.25 to represent a quarter. It's a little complicated, but they did a great job of explaining it, and they'll be bringing that to the board for further review or further explanation and discussion. We also had a conversation, quite a lengthy conversation about class rank and what does that mean to students, both from a positive and a negative standpoint, and what is it really used for as far as class ranking goes, and looking at what does that really mean to our district. We talked about the READ Act and the training, and that the deadline for the READ Act has been extended to July 26th, now giving a 2-year training schedule, which gives us more timing. The professional development that we're looking at for the program that we're looking to implement is really extensive, and so it will be quite an undertaking. So the longer time period is good news for our district. We also talked about what was mentioned before, that there will be additional funding coming with the READ Act, which is encouraging. What it means to our district is still yet to be known. And then we also talked about that pending legislation, Policy 606, will be coming back to, my understanding was back to the Curriculum Committee and the Policy Committee once legislation has been finalized on Policy 606, which has to do with curriculum review and the library book policy. So that was it. It was a great meeting, so thank you.
Anything else from anybody?
I attended the town hall. It was well done. Thank you for that. Director Olsted, I saw you there too. I just really appreciated the questions brought forward by the community members, and the added information and context given by Dr. Thomas and Director Frederickson was wonderful. Also just wanted to, I know we took a moment of silence, but just really wanted to just state the honor for the lives of Jim Delwo and Brad Bulver and their service to Prior Lake Savagery Schools.
Thank you very much. Okay, future events. We have our school board retreat this Friday from noon to 4 p.m. Our next study session, which will also have a board meeting afterwards, is May 13th. And then our district retirement celebration is May 16th. And at the end of the month, of course, we have Memorial Day, which is the unofficial start for most people of summer. So looking forward to that, and hopefully the end of monsoon season. At this point, I need a motion and a second to adjourn our business portion of the meeting and transition to a closed meeting.
So made.
Director Bullion and,
Dead heat.
and Director Atkinson? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes 6-0. And we're going to take a 5-minute recess so we can clear the room for the closed session.